The courtroom was silent. The kind of silence that hangs thick in the air, like everyone is holding their breath. The atmosphere was tense, every eye in the room glued to the man standing in front of the judge. Elon Musk, the billionaire tech mogul known for revolutionizing space travel, electric cars, and artificial intelligence, was here, not as a visionary entrepreneur, but as a defendant. And to everyone's surprise, he didn't seem fazed. The judge, a seasoned figure with years of legal experience etched into his face, was reading through the papers on his desk. He had heard cases involving powerful people before, CEOs, politicians, even celebrities, but something about this case felt different. The man standing at the front, with his signature unkempt hair and minimalist demeanor, was a world away from the usual corporate suspects. Elon Musk stood motionless, his hands folded in front of him, staring intently at the judge. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Musk's reputation for unpredictability had left many wondering, would he even show up? What kind of defense could someone like him possibly present in a courtroom, especially in a case this serious? Yet, here he was. The opposing side, represented by a powerful law firm with connections to one of Musk's fiercest competitors, had a case that seemed solid. They claimed Musk had stolen trade secrets, accusing him of corporate espionage related to Tesla's latest electric vehicle prototype. The tech world was on edge, and everyone was waiting to see how the notorious entrepreneur would handle this. Judge Thompson, a man with decades of experience, scanned the courtroom, before looking up at Musk with a raised eyebrow. "Mr. Musk," the judge said with a tone laced with both skepticism and curiosity, "you're defending yourself?" Musk's lawyer, Sarah Green, who had been working tirelessly for weeks, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She was young, yet she had built a solid reputation for herself in corporate law. She had believed in Musk's vision, even in moments when it seemed impossible to keep pace with his ever-changing strategies. But this was different. She had seen him take risks before, but this was uncharted territory. She feared that Musk's unorthodox approach might backfire. "Your Honor," Musk spoke, his voice calm but confident, "I have faith in the facts. This case will not unfold the way you think." The judge chuckled, more out of disbelief than amusement. It wasn't every day that someone like Musk stood in his courtroom with such confidence. "Very well," Judge Thompson said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "let's see how this plays out." Musk's defense didn't seem to impress the judge at first. The prosecutor, a sharp-suited, fast-talking attorney named David Cartwright, stood up and addressed the court. "Your Honor, the evidence in this case is clear. Mr. Musk and his companies have unlawfully used proprietary information that doesn't belong to them. The defendant's claims are nothing more than distractions meant to deflect attention from the core of the issue." Cartwright's words were cold and methodical, designed to shake the confidence of anyone sitting in the courtroom. Musk's actions in the business world had been, in his mind, a blatant disregard for the rules that Cartwright was eager to exploit. He laid out his case, citing emails, financial records, and confidential files that allegedly proved Musk's involvement in the theft of intellectual property. The judge nodded thoughtfully, but his skepticism toward Musk's defense remained apparent. "Mr. Musk," Judge Thompson said again, addressing the billionaire directly, "you realize that this is not some Silicon Valley boardroom debate. This is a courtroom, and you are facing serious allegations. What's your response?" Musk didn't flinch. He stood tall, the weight of the moment not even slightly diminishing his unwavering focus. "Your Honor," he said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade, "the truth is simple. The information in question was never proprietary. It was always meant to be shared, always open source." He paused, glancing at the prosecutor with a knowing look. "The real issue here is that my competitor doesn't understand the fundamental nature of innovation. They're trying to claim something that belongs to everyone as their own." The room went silent again, the impact of Musk's words hanging in the air. Sarah blinked, trying to process what Musk had just said. Open source? This wasn't the defense they had prepared for. There was no grand strategy laid out in the team's plans, no last-minute tricks. Musk had just thrown a curveball no one expected. The judge leaned forward, intrigued but still doubtful. "Mr. Musk, you're suggesting that the technology your company has developed is open to anyone? That it's public domain?" Musk didn't hesitate. "Yes. It's all public. The problem here isn't about stealing, it's about misunderstanding the vision of what this technology can do for the world." Cartwright, his face reddening, shot up from his seat. "Objection, Your Honor. This is absurd. This man is trying to twist the facts to suit his narrative." Judge Thompson raised his hand to silence the room. "Let Mr. Musk speak." The courtroom was now fully engaged. Musk's words had cast a new light on the case, shifting the narrative. There was something about the way he presented himself, his calm demeanor in the face of such serious allegations, that made people listen more closely. It was clear that Elon Musk was no ordinary defendant. He was someone who could turn the most unexpected situations into opportunities. The question was, would it work? Musk continued, "If we keep all our technology locked behind closed doors, we stifle progress. Our company's success has always been about enabling others to contribute, to build on what we've started." He looked around the courtroom, his eyes briefly meeting Sarah's before turning back to the judge. "What we're seeing here is an attempt to protect outdated business models that fear the future." Sarah sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Musk's argument, though unconventional, made sense. He was not the type to sit idly by and let his competitors hold him back. And yet, in the courtroom, with all eyes on him, was this strategy really going to work? The judge's reaction would be critical, but Sarah felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Musk had a point. And if that was the case, she had no idea how this case was going to unfold, but she was eager to see where Musk would take them next. But for now, it was clear, things weren't going as expected. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk had always been an enigma. To the public, he was either a genius or a madman, sometimes both. He was a man who revolutionized multiple industries, from creating PayPal, the giant in online payments, to launching SpaceX, a private space exploration company that sent rockets into orbit, all while pushing Tesla into the forefront of electric vehicle technology. Each step of the way, he seemed to defy conventional wisdom, proving wrong those who said he couldn't pull off the impossible. Yet, here he stood, in a courtroom, fighting to protect everything he had built, while somehow appearing so out of place. Musk's unconventional nature wasn't just a business strategy, it was in his very DNA. His mind constantly raced with new ideas, potential innovations, and solutions to problems the world had yet to realize it even had. Musk had a reputation for diving headfirst into projects that others wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. After all, who else could dream of colonizing Mars, launching reusable rockets, and designing self-driving cars, all in a lifetime? But this time, in the sterile confines of a courtroom, the stakes were higher than ever. His very empire, Tesla, SpaceX, and all his other ventures, was on the line. If the rival company's lawsuits succeeded, it could result in billions of dollars in damages, not to mention the irreparable damage to his reputation as an innovator and leader. Behind his bold statements and public persona, there was more to Musk than met the eye. What many didn't know was that, at his core, he was driven by something deeper than fame or fortune. He was driven by a sense of purpose, a desire to change the world. He often said that his true motivation was the survival of humanity. His ventures were never about personal gain. They were about creating a future where humanity could thrive, one step at a time. Musk believed in the potential of technology to make the world a better place, even if it meant pushing the boundaries of what people thought was possible. As a child, Musk had been an avid reader and a voracious learner. He was fascinated by science fiction and technology from a young age. Growing up in South Africa, he found solace in books and computers, spending hours immersed in them, dreaming of a future that was more advanced than the one around him. His parents were supportive, but Musk's constant curiosity often left them perplexed. He wasn't a typical child, he was always thinking about the future, far beyond the confines of his small hometown. But Musk's journey hadn't been easy. He'd faced rejection after rejection, failure after failure, before he ever achieved the level of success people now associate with his name. His venture into the world of business had begun with a small software company that sold for $300 million, a modest sum by today's standards, but it was enough to give Musk the seed capital to begin his next big venture, PayPal. From there, it was a series of giant leaps, each more audacious than the last. And yet, with all his success, Musk's personal life had been a complex tangle of relationships, both personal and professional. His public persona as a billionaire was contrasted by the private challenges he faced. Musk had been married 3 times, faced public scrutiny over his relationships, and dealt with the pressures of balancing his extraordinary ambitions with family life. Yet despite the turbulence, he remained focused on his ultimate goal, pushing humanity toward a new future. That night, as he sat in the courtroom, Musk's mind wasn't focused on the financial ruin that might come from losing this case. No, his thoughts were consumed with something more profound, the survival of the very companies that had made his vision possible. He knew the stakes were high, but he couldn't afford to let fear drive his actions. If anything, this challenge in the courtroom reminded him of why he had started in the first place, to fight for something greater than himself. But Musk wasn't alone in this fight. He had a team, and one of the most important people in that team was Sarah Green, his lawyer. Sarah had joined his legal team when she was still fresh out of law school, eager to make a name for herself in the high-stakes world of corporate litigation. She had always admired Musk's work from afar, but working alongside him had been a different story altogether. She had quickly realized that Musk was not like the other clients she had worked with. He wasn't interested in playing it safe or following conventional rules. Instead, he seemed to thrive on pushing boundaries, whether it was with his technological ventures or, as she was quickly discovering, in the courtroom. Sarah had always prided herself on her ability to stay calm under pressure, but facing off against a corporate giant like the one Musk was up against felt like a daunting challenge. Musk's strategy for defending himself was unorthodox, to say the least. As she watched him speak in the courtroom, a part of her wanted to panic. Musk was essentially throwing out their original defense strategy and winging it. But as she observed the courtroom reactions, whispers, skeptical glances, and the judge's raised eyebrows, something about his approach felt right. She had seen the determination in Musk's eyes. The way he was willing to risk it all for something he believed in. That was something she could relate to. She wasn't just working for a paycheck. She, too, wanted to be a part of something bigger. She wanted to win this case not just for Musk, but for all the people who relied on the success of Tesla, SpaceX, and the other companies Musk had built. She knew that if they lost this case, it would send ripples through the entire tech industry, possibly even beyond. But if they won, it could be a defining moment in history. The morning after that fateful courtroom clash, Sarah sat in her office, going over Musk's defense again. His argument about open-source technology had caught her by surprise. It wasn't the typical defense they had prepared for. She had expected him to fight back with the kind of aggressive corporate tactics she had seen in other cases. Instead, he had invoked an idea that was controversial in the corporate world but could be a game-changer. What if technology could be shared freely to drive innovation forward? She turned to the case files once more, trying to see if Musk's argument had any merit beyond the surface-level audacity. The more she read, the more she realized that Musk's defense wasn't as wild as it first appeared. If he could convince the court that the technology wasn't proprietary, but rather shared for the greater good, the case could be overturned. Her respect for Musk grew that day, not just because of his brilliance, but because of his ability to see the bigger picture. Sarah had always admired him, but now, she saw just how much she had to learn from him, not just as a lawyer, but as someone who looked at the world through a completely different lens. And as the case moved forward, Sarah knew one thing: the stakes were only going to get higher. The days after Elon Musk's unexpected defense in the courtroom were a blur of activity. Media outlets buzzed with coverage of the trial, analyzing every word Musk had said, speculating on the outcome, and questioning whether he was really the genius he portrayed himself to be, or if he was simply playing a dangerous game. The headlines were a mix of skepticism and admiration, but one thing was clear: Musk had everyone's attention. The pressure on the court case intensified, and Musk's team, including Sarah Green, felt the weight of every passing moment. Sarah had always believed in the power of a well-prepared legal strategy. She had spent months helping Musk prepare for every possible angle, every objection, every rebuttal, every piece of evidence. But Musk's approach was different. While his opponents were carefully crafting a case around their interpretation of the law, Musk seemed to be playing a far more abstract game. His defense was based on an ideal, a philosophy that opened up a Pandora's box of possibilities. Was the law truly built to protect the interests of individuals, or was it just a tool for corporate giants to control information and innovation? At first, Sarah had been nervous. After all, Musk's defense wasn't what they had planned for, and she had no idea whether it would resonate with the judge or jury. But as she watched his words sink into the courtroom, she began to understand that Musk was attempting to rewrite the narrative entirely. It wasn't just a case about stolen intellectual property, it was about the very essence of progress in the modern world. Musk had tapped into something deeper, something far more significant than what the prosecution had been prepared to argue. However, as Musk's legal team dug deeper into the case, it became evident that their opponent wasn't going to let this narrative shift go unchallenged. The prosecution, led by the sharp and relentless David Cartwright, had begun to ramp up their efforts. Every move Musk made was being scrutinized, every word he said twisted to fit their narrative. Cartwright, a seasoned corporate lawyer known for his cutthroat tactics, wasn't about to let Musk turn the case into some grand philosophical debate. For Cartwright, this was about winning, plain and simple. As the weeks passed, Sarah started to see the mounting pressure in every part of Musk's life. His reputation as an eccentric innovator was in jeopardy, and the whispers in the media were growing louder. People were questioning his intentions, his ability to follow through on his claims, and whether he could truly stand up to the legal machine that had been built to protect the status quo. For someone like Musk, who had spent his career defying the odds, this was a critical moment. But what was even more unnerving to Sarah was the toll it was taking on him personally. There were moments when Musk appeared distracted, his mind constantly racing with a million different ideas, jumping from one thought to the next. His typical bravado seemed to mask an underlying vulnerability, something he rarely let others see. Musk had always been a man of grand ideas, pushing the limits of what people thought was possible. But now, facing the very real possibility of losing everything, it seemed like even he didn't have all the answers. The team gathered in Sarah's office late one evening, each of them sitting around a table cluttered with files, laptops, and coffee cups. It was a pivotal meeting, one that would shape the next phase of their defense strategy. Musk leaned against the wall, arms crossed, as Sarah laid out the latest developments. "We're running out of time," Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "The prosecution is about to present its most damaging evidence. They're going to argue that the documents we've been using are fabricated, that Musk has misrepresented the nature of his technology. If they can prove that, the case is over." Musk stared at the documents on the table, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I've always said that we can't control how the world sees our work," he said, his voice softer than usual. "But what we can control is the truth behind it." Sarah nodded. "We need to find something that will prove beyond doubt that the technology in question wasn't proprietary. We need a smoking gun, something that ties everything together in a way they can't argue against." Musk looked up, his eyes sharp. "We have to shift the burden of proof. Let them prove that we stole something. If they can't prove it, then they have nothing." Sarah couldn't help but admire Musk's unwavering confidence, even in the face of such mounting pressure. It was as if his mind was already operating on a different plane than everyone else's, seeing things no one else could. But that didn't make the task at hand any easier. If they couldn't find a way to win, everything Musk had worked for, the companies, the technologies, the future he envisioned, could crumble. "All right," Sarah said, tapping a key on her laptop to bring up a new set of documents. "I've reviewed the patents, the intellectual property filings. I think I've found a way we can argue that the tech in question wasn't just open source, but that it was public domain from the very beginning. There are documents here, from years ago, that could support that. If we can find the right expert witness to back it up, we may be able to turn the tide." Musk's eyes brightened. "I'll get the best person we can. We need someone who's seen the value of open source from the ground up. Someone who's been a part of the movement." The room fell into a brief silence as the implications of Musk's words sank in. The prosecution was about to hit them with everything they had, but if Musk could bring in the right witness, someone who could speak to the foundational principles of his vision, it could change everything. It was a risk, no doubt, but it was one Musk was willing to take. Later that night, as the team disbanded and Sarah left the office, her thoughts were consumed with the gravity of the situation. She knew that winning this case wouldn't just be a victory for Musk, it would be a victory for everything he stood for. But more than that, it would send a message to the world, that innovation and progress couldn't be held hostage by the powerful few. But as the trial continued, it became clear that Cartwright wasn't about to give up. The prosecution would continue to pile on evidence, making it harder and harder for Musk's team to keep up. The battle for Musk's future, and the future of his companies, had only just begun. The days following the pivotal meeting were filled with tension and urgency. Every step Musk and Sarah took seemed to bring them closer to the edge. Musk's legal team had pored over every detail of the case, but the clock was ticking. The trial had reached its critical juncture, and with the prosecution about to present its strongest evidence, they needed to act fast. Sarah sat in her office, surrounded by stacks of papers, patent filings, and notes on the upcoming expert witness. Her mind raced through the possibilities, but she kept returning to one fact: everything hinged on their ability to disprove the notion that Tesla and SpaceX had stolen intellectual property from their rival company. If they could do that, if they could show that Musk had been in the right all along, the whole case could turn in their favor. The key to their success, however, was the expert witness Musk had insisted on bringing in, Dr. Harold Foster, a legendary figure in the world of open-source technology and software development. He was known for his groundbreaking work on making advanced technologies accessible to the public, and his theories had been instrumental in Musk's own philosophy of sharing information to accelerate human progress. Dr. Foster had been a vocal advocate for the kind of open-source model Musk had championed, and his presence in court could provide the weight they needed to shift the narrative. Musk had flown Dr. Foster in from his base in Silicon Valley, and now, with just hours before the court session resumed, they were all gathered in a small conference room at the courthouse, going over the finer details of his testimony. Sarah was nervous. Dr. Foster's testimony was crucial, and she knew that if he faltered, it could be disastrous. "Dr. Foster," Sarah began, looking over the man who was about to be the key to their defense, "you know what's at stake here. We need to prove that Tesla and SpaceX's innovations weren't stolen, but rather shared and developed with the larger open-source community. You've worked in this field for decades. Can we prove this?" Dr. Foster, a man in his late 50s with graying hair and round glasses, looked calm, almost too calm. He exhaled deeply before speaking, his voice steady but full of passion. "Sarah, what Musk has done isn't just about creating products. It's about creating a new paradigm for how the world sees progress. If the prosecution wants to claim that Tesla or SpaceX have kept technology to themselves, they're missing the bigger picture. What Musk has done is open the doors for innovation to flow freely. They've shared their designs, their breakthroughs, and made them accessible to the public. That's the essence of open source." Musk, who had been standing near the window, turned around, his eyes glinting with determination. Dr. Foster's right. I didn't create these technologies to keep them hidden in a vault. We've always worked to bring others into the fold. Now we just have to prove that in court. Sarah nodded, but her stomach churned with anxiety. The case wasn't going to be as simple as making a statement. She knew that in the courtroom, words could be twisted, facts manipulated, and intentions misrepresented. Every detail of Dr. Foster's testimony had to be perfect. The courtroom was packed when the trial resumed the next day. The opposing legal team had taken their positions, and the atmosphere felt charged, as if a storm was about to break. Musk sat at the defense table, his face expressionless, but Sarah could see the strain in his posture. He was a man who had faced setbacks before, but this was different. The weight of the world seemed to be pressing down on him. The judge, a stern woman with a reputation for no-nonsense rulings, called the court to order. "We will now hear from the defense's expert witness," she said, her voice echoing in the silent courtroom. Sarah motioned for Dr. Foster to take the stand. The room held its breath as the old man stood and walked toward the witness box. He adjusted his glasses and took a seat, his calm demeanor immediately apparent. The prosecutor, David Cartwright, leaned forward, preparing to cross-examine. Sarah began her direct examination, her voice steady as she introduced Dr. Foster to the court. "Dr. Foster, can you explain to the court your experience with open-source technology and how it relates to the innovations we've seen from Tesla and SpaceX?" Dr. Foster cleared his throat and began, his voice confident but measured. "I've been involved in the open-source movement since its inception. The idea is simple: when you make your work available to others, it accelerates innovation. The sharing of ideas is the foundation of progress. Musk has been a key player in this field, especially with his companies. Tesla has open-sourced its patents, allowing competitors and innovators to use them to create better electric vehicles. SpaceX has shared critical technology that enables others to explore space. This is not theft, this is collaboration." The courtroom listened intently, but Sarah could sense the tension building. She knew that Cartwright was itching to tear into Dr. Foster's testimony. Sure enough, as soon as Sarah finished her questioning, the prosecution pounced. David Cartwright stood, adjusting his tie, and turned to Dr. Foster. "Dr. Foster, while your idealistic view of open source may sound noble, isn't it true that Musk and his companies have strategically decided which technologies they make available and which they keep for themselves?" Dr. Foster didn't flinch. "No, Mr. Cartwright. The technologies Musk has chosen to share are part of a larger mission to ensure humanity's progress, especially in the fields of electric transportation and space exploration. The idea that Tesla or SpaceX are withholding critical technology is simply not accurate." Cartwright smirked. "So you're telling us that they've shared everything? Even their most groundbreaking technologies? How convenient that the prosecution can't seem to find any solid evidence that Musk's companies haven't kept things hidden. Can you explain that, Dr. Foster?" Dr. Foster leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving Cartwright's. "I can explain that, Mr. Cartwright. You're looking at this through the wrong lens. The evidence you're talking about isn't about ownership, it's about collective growth. The technology in question was always meant to be part of a greater conversation. The only thing that's hidden here is the truth about the benefits of shared knowledge." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, and even the judge raised an eyebrow. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she saw the effect Dr. Foster's words were having. Musk's vision was starting to shine through, and the tide was beginning to turn. As the day wore on, the defense had gained significant ground. Dr. Foster's testimony had resonated deeply with the jury. His credibility as an expert in open-source technology had been enough to convince many that Musk's approach wasn't a violation of intellectual property, but rather a testament to his commitment to pushing humanity forward. But there was still more to come. The prosecution was far from finished, and Sarah knew that the road ahead was long. They had won this battle, but the war was still ongoing. As the court adjourned for the day, Sarah exchanged a brief glance with Musk. He didn't smile, but there was a glimmer of something in his eyes, a hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they might emerge victorious from this fight. And as they prepared for the next phase of the trial, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this case wasn't just about technology, it was about a battle of ideals. Would progress and innovation win the day, or would the forces of corporate greed and control prevail? The days leading up to the final phase of the trial were filled with a palpable sense of tension. Every moment in the courtroom seemed to inch them closer to the inevitable showdown, the culmination of everything Musk had worked for and everything the prosecution had built against him. The defense had gained some ground thanks to Dr. Foster's testimony, but it was clear that the prosecution wasn't backing down. As the court session continued, the air became heavier with anticipation. The final witnesses had taken the stand, and now the time had come for Musk himself to testify. His demeanor, as usual, was calm, composed, but underneath, Sarah could feel a storm brewing. Musk had been through countless challenges in his life, building Tesla from the ground up, launching SpaceX to the stars, but this trial was different. This wasn't just about his companies. This was about his vision, his ideals, and whether the world would allow him to continue pursuing them. Sarah sat next to Musk, her heart pounding. The defense had presented a strong case, but Musk's testimony would be the most crucial moment. It was his chance to show the world who he was, not just a CEO, but a visionary who was willing to risk everything for progress. The question now was whether the jury would see him as a hero, or a criminal hiding behind lofty ideals. Musk stood up, adjusting his suit jacket as he made his way to the witness stand. There was a quiet strength in his steps, but Sarah noticed the slight tension in his shoulders. Despite his calm exterior, she knew that the pressure of the moment was weighing heavily on him. This wasn't just another courtroom appearance for Musk, it was a defining moment of his life. The judge called the session to order, and the prosecution was the first to cross-examine Musk. "Mr. Musk," Cartwright began, his voice as sharp as ever, "you've made quite a name for yourself in the world of innovation. But tell me, how can you justify the argument that your companies have been open source, when the very technologies in question were only made public after the fact? Were they not intended to be proprietary in nature until the world knew how valuable they were?" Musk didn't flinch, his eyes steady as he responded. "The technologies we've developed, whether at Tesla or SpaceX, were always meant to be part of something larger. From the start, the goal has been to push humanity forward, to solve the world's greatest problems. We didn't build them to hoard them. If we had, we wouldn't have made them public in the first place." Cartwright raised an eyebrow, clearly preparing to poke holes in Musk's narrative. "But how do you explain the fact that your company held on to critical intellectual property until it became commercially viable? It seems to me like you're selectively sharing what benefits your business, and withholding what could have helped others." Musk paused, his gaze unwavering. "Sometimes, it's about timing. Yes, we needed to ensure the sustainability of our companies. But that doesn't mean we've held back information from the public. Quite the opposite. We've taken risks that no other company would be willing to take, all in the name of progress." Cartwright pressed further, but it was clear that Musk's words were beginning to resonate. His confidence had an almost magnetic quality to it. He wasn't backing down, not even in the face of Cartwright's fierce questioning. When it was Sarah's turn to cross-examine, she could see the exhaustion in Musk's eyes. But there was also something else, something deeper. It was as if, in this moment, everything Musk had worked for was coming to a head, and the future was hanging by a thread. She knew that if they could just push the right buttons, they might be able to turn the tide in their favor. "Mr. Musk," Sarah began, her voice calm and measured, "you've spoken at length about the importance of innovation and open-source principles. But can you tell us, in your own words, what drives you to take these risks? What is it that makes you willing to put everything on the line, even when the stakes are so high?" Musk's eyes flickered, and for a brief moment, the weight of the question seemed to catch him off guard. It was a personal question, one that cut to the heart of his motivations. The courtroom grew silent as Musk gathered his thoughts, the tension building with each passing second. "I've always believed that the only way forward is to challenge the status quo," he said slowly. "For too long, the world has been held back by systems that prioritize profit over progress. What drives me is the belief that we have the power to change that. Whether it's through electric cars, space exploration, or sustainable energy, I want to leave behind a world that's better than the one I came into. It's not just about building companies, it's about building a future." His words hung in the air, and for the first time in the trial, Sarah saw a shift in the jury's demeanor. They weren't just hearing a defense anymore. They were hearing a man's truth, his vision, and his passion. As the session drew to a close for the day, the courtroom was buzzing with murmurs. It was as though the atmosphere had changed entirely. The prosecution's case, while strong, had suddenly felt less certain. Musk's testimony had opened a window into his soul, and it was clear that something about his sincerity had struck a chord with the jurors. Sarah could feel the shift in the room, and she couldn't help but hope that this was the moment they had been waiting for. Later that evening, Sarah found herself in her hotel room, replaying the day's events in her mind. She couldn't help but think about Musk's words, the raw emotion, the vulnerability behind his usual confident demeanor. It had been a gamble, opening up to the court like that, but it was a gamble that seemed to be paying off. The next morning, as the trial resumed, the mood was different. There was a sense of anticipation, but also a quiet sense of hope. Musk had delivered his emotional climax, and now all they could do was wait for the jury's verdict. As the closing arguments were made, Sarah held her breath, knowing that the final chapter of this trial was drawing near. The emotional tension in the courtroom was almost unbearable, and the outcome was uncertain. The verdict came a few days later. It was a moment that would go down in history, not just for Musk, but for the entire industry. The jury had deliberated carefully, weighed the evidence, and ultimately sided with Musk's vision. The ruling was a victory, not just for Tesla and SpaceX, but for the ideals Musk had championed for years. The prosecution's case had crumbled under the weight of Musk's testimony and the strength of his defense. As the news broke, Sarah stood in her office, watching the headlines roll in. It wasn't just a win for Musk, it was a win for the future. The court had validated his belief that innovation and progress were worth fighting for, and that open-source collaboration could change the world. Musk's legacy had just been solidified, and it was only the beginning. The days following the verdict felt like a dream, an incredible and almost surreal turn of events. The courtroom had erupted in applause as the jury handed down its decision. Musk had been acquitted of all charges, and the legal battle that had consumed his life for months was finally over. But as the celebration began, Musk knew that the journey was far from finished. The morning after the trial, Musk sat in his office at Tesla's headquarters, his gaze fixed on the skyline through the large windows. The city sprawled out beneath him, a vast expanse of opportunities and challenges, all interconnected in ways he couldn't always predict. The courtroom drama, the intense pressure, the emotional highs and lows, they all seemed like distant memories now, like another life entirely. Sarah walked in, her face a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. "We did it, Elon," she said, a tired smile on her face. "You won." Musk nodded, though there was no trace of celebration in his expression. He'd won, yes, but there was still so much to do. "It's not over," he replied. "This is just the beginning. We've made a statement, but now we have to deliver." Sarah understood. She had seen the fire in Musk's eyes during the trial, the conviction that drove him to risk everything for his vision. But now that the trial was behind them, that same fire burned even brighter. Musk wasn't the kind of man who could rest on his laurels, he was always looking ahead, always searching for the next challenge. "We'll continue to push forward, Musk," Sarah said, her voice firm. "The world is watching. This victory isn't just about you or Tesla. It's about the future. And I think we've proven something to the world, that innovation can't be stopped, no matter the obstacles." Musk turned to her, his eyes focused. Exactly. This trial was about more than just defending Tesla or SpaceX. It was about defending a vision for the future. A future where progress isn't limited by old ways of thinking, where we can open source ideas to benefit humanity as a whole. He paused for a moment, deep in thought. But the world is still full of people who want to control progress. They want to keep things in the hands of the few. And as long as that mindset exists, we'll have to fight for what we believe in. Sarah nodded. She knew Musk well enough to understand that his fight wasn't over. It never would be. But she also knew that today's victory had shifted the balance. They had shown the world that innovation and open source principles were not just buzzwords, they were the future. And that future, no matter how difficult, was worth fighting for. Later that day, Musk held a press conference to address the public about the outcome of the trial. Journalists gathered in front of him, eager to hear his thoughts. The room was filled with cameras and flashing lights, but Musk remained calm, his voice steady as he spoke to the crowd. Today, we've shown the world that progress and innovation can't be stifled by outdated systems or the pursuit of profit at the expense of humanity, Musk began. This trial wasn't just about defending Tesla and SpaceX, it was about defending the future. A future where we can collaborate, share ideas, and work together to solve the world's biggest problems. He paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. The victory here isn't mine. It's a victory for all of us. It's a victory for anyone who believes in the power of innovation to change the world. And it's just the beginning. The real work starts now. We have a responsibility to continue pushing the boundaries, to continue challenging the norms, and to never stop fighting for a better tomorrow. As he spoke, Musk could see the faces in the crowd, some skeptical, some inspired, and some just trying to keep up with the rapid pace of his ideas. But one thing was clear, his words were reaching them. They were hearing him. And that was the first step. In the days that followed, Musk's message spread far and wide. The headlines praised him for his victory in the courtroom, but the real story was the shift in perception that had taken place. People weren't just seeing him as a tech mogul anymore, they were seeing him as a visionary, a man who had faced incredible odds and come out on top. And while that wasn't the reason he fought, it was a powerful result. Tesla's stock surged in the wake of the trial, with investors seeing the court's ruling as a positive sign for the company's future. SpaceX, too, began to attract more attention, as Musk's legal victory solidified his reputation as someone who would stop at nothing to advance space exploration and sustainable energy. But for Musk, the victory wasn't about financial gain. It was about something much bigger. It was about the world beginning to understand that the kind of innovation he championed wasn't just about creating products, it was about creating possibilities. The ruling in his favor was a signal that the world was ready for a new era of progress, one where collaboration and open-source principles weren't seen as threats, but as the keys to unlocking humanity's full potential. As the weeks passed, Musk returned to the relentless pace of his work. He was already focused on the next set of challenges, new technologies, new frontiers. There were rockets to launch, cars to build, and new ideas to explore. But now, every decision he made carried with it the weight of his newfound victory, the knowledge that his vision had been validated in the highest court. One evening, as Musk walked through the Tesla factory in Fremont, he found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. The long hours, the sacrifices, the setbacks, all of it had led to this moment. But in some ways, this victory was just the start of a much larger mission. As he watched the workers around him, assembling electric vehicles that would change the world, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just building a company, he was building the future. And in that moment, surrounded by the hum of machinery and the buzz of innovation, he knew that the fight for that future would never end. The courtroom drama, the legal battles, and the public scrutiny, they were just obstacles along the way. The real challenge was creating a world where progress wasn't limited by outdated systems or corporate greed. A world where innovation could thrive, unfettered by the constraints of the past. And with that, Musk's journey continued. The days after the trial's resolution passed in a blur of media interviews, public appearances, and meetings. Elon Musk's life, for better or worse, had always been defined by an unrelenting pace. Even now, as the world celebrated his courtroom victory, Musk knew that the real work was just beginning. He had faced the legal system, defeated his critics, and come out on top. But the truth was, that battle wasn't the one that truly concerned him. There was a new challenge ahead. And it wasn't just about technology or business, it was about something much larger. As Musk sat in his office at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, he stared at the whiteboard covered with complex diagrams, timelines, and sketches. Mars, electric cars, hyperloops, artificial intelligence, these were the realms Musk had long been obsessed with, and yet the world he envisioned felt more uncertain than ever before. Sarah entered the room, carrying a stack of reports. Her expression was intense, as usual, but there was something else in her eyes, a mix of determination and concern. "Musk, there's something you need to see," she said, dropping the reports onto the table. "It's about the global energy situation. And it's worse than we thought." Musk leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. He gestured for Sarah to continue. "Take a look at these," she said, pulling out the first report. "The global energy crisis has accelerated faster than expected. Several countries are facing unprecedented energy shortages, and the push for sustainable energy solutions has never been more urgent." Musk's mind raced. He had always known that energy and sustainability were at the heart of humanity's future, but the urgency of the crisis was more pressing than he had anticipated. He had spent years trying to push electric cars and renewable energy systems, but the world wasn't moving fast enough. The issues Sarah presented were no longer hypothetical, they were here, right in front of him, and they were threatening the very foundation of society. "How bad is it?" Musk asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it for himself. "It's bad, Elon," Sarah replied, her voice firm. "Several major economies are starting to collapse under the weight of fossil fuel dependence. Natural disasters are becoming more frequent and intense, directly impacting energy infrastructure. People are literally in the dark, struggling to survive in parts of the world that should be thriving. The shift to solar, wind, and other renewable sources is happening, but not fast enough." Musk rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "We've been too slow, haven't we? The clock is ticking, and we're running out of time." Sarah nodded. "The situation is dire, but this could be our chance to lead the world into a new era. We've got the technology, solar grids, battery storage, electric vehicles, but it's going to take more than just a few steps forward. We need a revolution in how we think about energy." Musk stood up and walked toward the window, his mind already racing through a dozen ideas. He had always prided himself on thinking beyond the horizon, on seeing things that others couldn't. But this was different. This wasn't just about Tesla's next vehicle or SpaceX's next rocket. This was about the survival of the planet. It was about the future of humanity itself. "You're right," Musk said finally, turning to face Sarah. "It's time we make the next giant leap. But we're going to need more than just incremental changes. We need a complete transformation of the global energy infrastructure. And I'm not talking about just a few pilot projects. We need something big, something that forces the entire world to take notice. A game changer." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about a new kind of energy solution. One that could change everything?" Musk's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Exactly. Think about it, Sarah, what if we could develop an energy system that's completely decentralized? A network of renewable energy sources that don't rely on a central grid. Imagine solar farms in every city, energy storage that can power homes and entire communities for days on end, and a global network of charging stations for electric vehicles. We need to accelerate the push for a new kind of infrastructure. Not just for sustainability's sake, but for survival." Sarah nodded slowly, her mind working through the possibilities. A decentralized global energy system would require massive coordination, but it could work. But what's the first step? Where do we even start? Musk looked back at the board, where he had scribbled ideas for a new project, something bigger than anything Tesla or SpaceX had ever attempted. His fingers moved to the dry erase marker, and he began to sketch a rough outline of a global solar grid that would cover vast swaths of the planet. We start with a giant leap into new energy storage systems, Musk said, his voice calm but determined. We need batteries that are far more efficient, scalable, and affordable. Tesla's energy storage solutions have been great, but they're not enough. We need to figure out how to make these systems so ubiquitous that they're as common as power lines. Sarah's eyes widened. You're proposing a network of renewable energy systems that could reach every corner of the globe? That's going to require global cooperation on a scale that's never been seen before. You're talking about a new kind of energy revolution. Exactly, Musk replied, turning back to the window, lost in thought. We have the tools. The technology. The vision. Now, we just need to execute it. The world has no choice but to follow. Musk's vision for a global energy revolution began to take shape over the following weeks. As the Tesla and SpaceX teams scrambled to develop new solutions for energy storage, solar generation, and electric transportation, Musk began meeting with world leaders and key stakeholders. His message was simple: the time for incremental progress had passed. If the world was going to survive the growing energy crisis, it needed to shift to a decentralized, renewable energy grid, powered by the sun and stored in powerful, efficient batteries. The response was mixed. Some countries expressed interest in the bold vision, while others were more skeptical. But Musk didn't back down. He had seen firsthand how the world could change when people pushed the boundaries of what was possible. And this time, he was determined to push harder. As the months passed, the first trials of Musk's new energy system were rolled out in select regions. Solar farms and energy storage units began to power entire communities, and Tesla's electric vehicles became a key part of the transition to sustainable energy. The scale of the project was enormous, and every step forward felt like a battle against the clock. But Musk remained focused, unwavering in his belief that the future of humanity depended on embracing new technologies and pushing the limits of what was possible. He had faced the courtroom and won, but now he was facing a much greater challenge: the fight to save the planet. Late one night, Musk sat in his office, staring at a map of the world. It was dotted with glowing markers indicating areas where his energy projects were taking root. His eyes traced the lines connecting these points, an interconnected web of solar power, energy storage, and electric vehicles that could one day change the course of history. He had faced numerous obstacles in his career, but this was the most important challenge of all. The future wasn't about rockets to Mars or electric cars anymore. It was about something more urgent: a future where clean energy could power the world, no matter where you lived. Musk stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the city below. The lights were bright, and the world seemed alive with possibility. It was a reminder that, no matter how daunting the challenge, there was always hope. And hope was something Musk would continue to fight for. The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, as Musk's new energy revolution began to take root. The world had taken notice of his ambitious plan, but the path to a global energy transformation was far from easy. There were many who believed in his vision, but there were also powerful forces, corporations, governments, and interest groups, who would do everything in their power to slow down the progress. Musk knew that the battle ahead wasn't just about technology, it was about shifting the mindset of the entire world. People were used to the status quo: fossil fuels, centralized power grids, and the comfort of familiarity. Changing that mindset was going to be the hardest part of the revolution. As the new energy infrastructure began to be tested in small regions, Musk's teams at Tesla and SpaceX worked tirelessly to develop more efficient solar panels, more powerful batteries, and innovative methods for energy storage and distribution. Every trial, every success, and every failure was a step closer to the ultimate goal, a planet powered by clean, renewable energy. One afternoon, Musk sat in his office at Tesla's headquarters, going over the results of the latest trials. Sarah entered the room, looking both excited and exhausted. She dropped a folder onto his desk. "Musk, we've got some breakthroughs," she said. "The new solar panels we've been testing, well, they're performing far better than expected. The energy storage systems are more efficient than we thought. This could be the game changer we've been waiting for." Musk leaned forward, his eyes lighting up as he scanned the reports. This could accelerate the process. We're not just talking about powering small communities anymore. We're talking about entire countries. Sarah nodded. "Exactly. And we've started working with a few nations that are interested in large-scale rollouts. It's slow, but it's moving. But there's still resistance from others. Oil and gas companies are pulling every string they can to block us." Musk leaned back in his chair, thinking for a moment. That's to be expected. They've made fortunes off the current system. They're not going to give up easily. "We knew this wasn't going to be a walk in the park," Sarah said, crossing her arms. "But we have to find a way to get past the resistance. The world can't afford to wait." "I know," Musk said, his voice soft but resolute. "But we'll win, Sarah. Not by force, but by making the future undeniable. We're showing the world that this is the only way forward." As Musk's vision began to gain traction, the energy industry's response grew more intense. Lobbyists from the oil and gas sectors descended upon politicians, warning them of the economic risks of abandoning fossil fuels too quickly. Headlines echoed the message of uncertainty: will the world's energy future be powered by solar, or will it lead to economic collapse? But Musk remained unfazed. He knew that fear was the primary tool of those who wanted to hold on to the past. And that fear was something he had learned to dismantle over the years. With every successful test, every new partnership, and every milestone, Musk's resolve strengthened. The resistance wasn't only external. Internally, his teams were under tremendous pressure to deliver. The complexities of building out a global, decentralized energy system were immense. There were logistical challenges: how to distribute energy across vast distances without relying on old transmission lines. There were technical challenges: how to ensure energy storage systems could handle spikes in demand while remaining cost-effective. And there were regulatory challenges: how to navigate the maze of government red tape and legal hurdles that slowed progress. But Musk thrived on these kinds of challenges. He saw obstacles as opportunities, roadblocks as stepping stones. And as the world's eyes focused on his every move, he was determined not to let anything stand in his way. One evening, Musk was at a conference in London, speaking to a group of world leaders and energy experts. The room was filled with skeptical faces, people who had seen new ideas come and go, people who had heard bold promises only to watch them falter in the face of reality. But Musk was used to skepticism. It was part of the territory. "You're talking about a revolution," one of the panelists said, his voice filled with doubt. "A complete overhaul of the global energy infrastructure. But how can we trust that this vision will succeed? We've seen failures before, ambitious plans that never lived up to the hype. What makes this different?" Musk looked out over the room, his gaze unwavering. "What's different," he began, his voice steady, "is that the world no longer has the luxury of waiting. Our current system is failing. We can't keep using fossil fuels to power our lives. The planet is already paying the price with extreme weather, environmental damage, and unsustainable consumption. What we're doing is not just innovation, it's survival." He paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle in. "I've seen the future. And it's not just about building electric cars or rockets. It's about creating a world where energy is clean, abundant, and accessible to everyone. We're not talking about a handful of people benefiting from new technology, we're talking about a global shift. A shift that will empower nations, communities, and individuals. We can do this. And we will. The room was silent for a moment, and then, slowly, the skepticism began to fade. Musk had done what he always did, he had turned the doubt into belief. The power of his vision, combined with his relentless drive, had begun to win over even the most cynical minds. After the conference, several nations expressed interest in accelerating their renewable energy projects, starting with solar farms and large-scale energy storage systems. Musk's dream was starting to take shape, one piece at a time. Back at Tesla's headquarters, the pace of innovation never slowed. Tesla's solar energy division ramped up production, and engineers worked around the clock to improve battery storage. In the meantime, SpaceX continued to push forward with its own projects, exploring new ways to expand humanity's presence in space, but also learning lessons that could be applied to Earth's energy needs. The work was exhausting, but Musk thrived in it. The challenges only made him more determined. The world had started to see that this wasn't just another Silicon Valley fantasy. This was real. The shift to renewable energy was no longer a question of if, but when. And Musk knew that when was now. The world had reached a tipping point, and he was at the center of it, pushing with everything he had to make sure that the future would be one of sustainable energy, global collaboration, and limitless possibilities. Late one night, Musk stood on the rooftop of the Tesla headquarters, overlooking the city below. The lights twinkled in the distance, but Musk's mind was on the larger picture, the one he had always envisioned, a world where technology and innovation could truly change the world for the better. The road ahead was long, and the obstacles were many. But Musk had never been one to back down from a challenge. If anything, the bigger the challenge, the more determined he became. He had faced the courts, he had faced doubt, and now he was facing the very future of the planet itself. But one thing was certain, he would not rest until that future was secured. The shift towards sustainable energy was gaining momentum, but Musk quickly realized that for every step forward, there seemed to be 2 steps backward. The momentum he had built was being countered by powerful forces determined to protect the status quo, corporate giants, entrenched governments, and energy magnates who saw Musk's vision as a direct threat to their bottom lines. The global media, which had once hailed Musk's vision as a revolutionary solution to the world's energy woes, began to sour. Negative headlines and opinion pieces appeared daily, questioning the feasibility of his ambitious projects. Was his plan really as practical as he made it seem? Was he merely an eccentric billionaire with an inflated sense of his own ability to change the world? And it wasn't just the media. Powerful energy lobbies launched aggressive campaigns against Musk's initiatives. They pushed back against government policies that encouraged renewable energy investment, trying to sway public opinion by capitalizing on the uncertainty of the times. They raised questions about the cost, the reliability, and the supposed and proven nature of Musk's systems, especially when it came to mass global implementation. At the same time, some governments, particularly those heavily invested in fossil fuels, began to drag their feet when it came to embracing Musk's vision. The transition from a fossil fuel-powered world to one dominated by renewable energy sources was an enormous undertaking, and many were not ready for such a radical shift. Countries with economies reliant on oil exports were slow to change their policies. Musk's frustration was palpable. In the strategy meetings at Tesla and SpaceX, he made it clear that the time for waiting was over. "We don't have the luxury of time anymore," Musk declared, pacing in front of his team. "We're talking about the future of humanity, and every minute counts." But his words, though powerful, couldn't silence the critics. "Then why aren't people acting faster?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowed in frustration. "Why are they still so reluctant to adopt these solutions?" Musk sighed, rubbing his face. "Because fear holds them back. Fear of the unknown, fear of losing their wealth and power. It's natural. But we can't let them dictate the pace of progress. We have to move forward, no matter the cost." "We're already doing everything we can," Sarah said. The solar farms, the battery systems, the energy grids, they're working. We have success stories across multiple regions, but every time we try to scale up, someone's out there trying to discredit us. Musk turned to look out the window. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the horizon. It was beautiful. But the contrast between the beauty of the world and the challenges ahead weighed on him heavily. He had faced adversity before: SpaceX's early failures, Tesla's near bankruptcy, the skepticism surrounding his lofty goals. Yet this felt different. This was more than just a business fight or a technological challenge. This was a battle for the future of the planet. A battle that, if lost, could have devastating consequences. The next day, Musk flew to Washington, D.C. to meet with a group of policymakers who had been critical of his renewable energy push. The atmosphere in the meeting room was tense. Several members of Congress, along with energy industry representatives, had gathered to discuss the progress of Musk's energy initiatives. It wasn't just a casual discussion, it was a battle for control over the future of global energy. Musk knew that the people in the room weren't all his allies. Some of them had already voiced strong opposition to his plans. Others were merely trying to figure out how to take advantage of his success for their own political gains. Senator Roland Harris, a known oil and gas advocate, sat at the head of the table, his arms crossed and his expression cold. "Mr. Musk," he began, "we've heard your pitch, but the reality is, your revolutionary plan is nothing more than a costly gamble. You're talking about powering entire nations with solar grids and battery storage, but you've failed to prove that your systems can withstand the demand of large-scale operations. And what about the cost to the average American taxpayer?" Musk didn't flinch. He had dealt with his fair share of tough critics, but this was different. Senator Harris had the power to influence legislation that could slow down or even shut down the adoption of renewable energy technologies in favor of fossil fuels. Musk leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Senator Harris, you're right to ask about the cost. Every new technology has a cost at the beginning. But the future cost of inaction is far higher. Every day we delay the transition to clean energy is another day we put our planet in peril. The longer we rely on fossil fuels, the more damage we do, not just to our environment, but to the economy, public health, and global security." Harris raised an eyebrow, clearly not impressed. "Your company has made billions, and yet you come here asking for government support. What makes you think we should invest taxpayer money into your untested solutions?" Musk took a breath, keeping his composure. "Because the only way to drive large-scale change is to get the government on board. The market alone can't create the infrastructure we need. We need to think long-term. Fossil fuel dependency is a ticking time bomb, and we're already hearing the first explosions: natural disasters, climate migration, failing ecosystems. What do you want? A world where we're constantly reacting to crises, or one where we proactively create solutions?" The room was silent for a moment. Harris was clearly trying to figure out how to respond, but Musk pressed on. "Think about it. The world is changing, whether we like it or not. We have an opportunity to be at the forefront of that change. To build a future where energy is abundant, sustainable, and affordable for everyone. The question isn't whether we should act, the question is whether we want to be the ones who created the solution, or the ones left behind watching the world burn." Musk's words hung in the air like an electric charge. The room was divided, some members nodding slowly, while others scowled in defiance. Harris didn't seem ready to concede, but the seed of doubt had been planted. After the meeting, Musk sat in his car, staring out the window as it drove through the streets of Washington. The confrontation had been intense, but it had also been a necessary step. He knew that convincing the people in power wasn't going to be easy, but it was essential. The energy revolution wasn't going to happen without the backing of governments and the broader global community. The resistance was formidable. But Musk had learned long ago that resistance was simply a sign that you were doing something important. The world was changing, and Musk intended to be the one to lead it. Back at Tesla, the teams were hard at work pushing forward with their research and development. Solar energy advancements were coming in at an unprecedented rate, and new battery technologies were showing promise. Yet, despite the progress, Musk knew that without the political and corporate backing he needed, the transition would continue to be slow. The fight was far from over. But Musk had learned that if there was one thing he knew how to do, it was to never back down. The path ahead was uncertain, but with each step forward, he was moving closer to a future powered by clean, renewable energy. The battle against the forces of resistance would continue, but Musk was ready to face whatever came next. Musk was no stranger to resistance. Over the years, he had weathered countless storms, ranging from doubters to outright adversaries, but this was different. The growing pushback against his energy initiatives wasn't just about business or technology. It was about survival. Yet, in his usual fashion, Musk saw opportunity where others saw defeat. A door had cracked open, a crack in the armor of the opposition. And it all started with one unexpected event. It began with a chance encounter at a climate summit in Berlin, a conference that brought together world leaders, environmental experts, and representatives from industries both old and new. Musk had been invited to speak about his vision for a sustainable energy future, a vision that had garnered as much admiration as it had skepticism. As usual, the room was divided. Some saw him as a visionary who was shaping the future. Others saw him as an arrogant billionaire pushing an unrealistic dream. However, amidst the usual chorus of differing opinions, Musk encountered something that stopped him in his tracks. While heading into the conference hall, he ran into someone he hadn't expected, Olivia Hayward, a prominent figure in the global energy sector and a former ally turned adversary. Once, they had been on the same side, working together to push for policies that would support green technologies. But in recent years, Olivia had shifted away from Musk's path, now publicly backing efforts to slow down the renewable energy transition in favor of more gradual approaches. Olivia, Musk greeted, offering a brief nod. He wasn't sure what to expect. Their past encounters had been filled with tension, and this was no exception. Elon, she replied coolly, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of something deeper, curiosity, maybe even nostalgia. I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you might be too busy saving the world to show up at these things. Musk raised an eyebrow. I'd say it's more about ensuring the world has a chance to be saved. He paused. But I take it you're not on my side anymore. She gave a tight smile. I haven't exactly been silent about my reservations, have I? Reservations about what? Musk pressed, already knowing the answer but unable to resist the pull of the conversation. That renewable energy will work. Not exactly, Olivia said, her voice turning more serious. It's about the pace. You're pushing too hard. People can't change overnight. You know that. And forcing governments and corporations to adopt your vision without considering the global economic consequences is reckless. Musk leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. I'm not forcing anyone. But time isn't on our side. This isn't just about some distant future. It's about right now. You know better than most, our planet is in crisis. And waiting isn't an option. Olivia's face softened. For the first time in their conversation, she looked vulnerable. You're right. But the reality is, the transition is going to be slower than you want. The world isn't ready to jump into your deep end without considering the cost of the plunge. It's not just about the environment, it's about economies, job losses, social upheaval. Some things need more time. Musk's mind raced. He had heard similar arguments many times before. But this time, the words hit differently. Olivia wasn't just another critic. She was someone who knew the intricacies of the global energy landscape, someone who could help or hinder the mission depending on where she stood. Then help me, Musk said, his voice softer now. We need allies, not enemies. I don't have the luxury of waiting. But I'm not blind to the complexities. You know the system. You can help us navigate the transition. If we work together, we can make this happen, even faster. For a moment, Olivia stood silently, looking at Musk. Her gaze was unreadable. Then, she exhaled deeply. I'll consider it. But you need to show the world that your approach isn't just a silver bullet. You need to find a way to make this transition less painful. And that means finding a balance between your idealism and reality. Musk nodded. Deal. But it has to be sooner than later. Over the next few days, Musk worked tirelessly, meeting with international leaders, scientists, and engineers, trying to solidify the most promising alliances and expand his energy initiatives. But something had shifted in him after that encounter with Olivia. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that Olivia wasn't wrong. It wasn't just about fast-tracking renewable energy, it was about navigating the complexities of a transition that affected every corner of society. The economic repercussions were enormous, and Musk knew that his idealistic approach needed some modifications. He convened a meeting with his closest advisors, including Sarah, to address the issue head-on. We've been pushing too hard, Musk said, without preamble, as he sat down at the head of the table. We need to reconsider how we approach this transition. I've always been about pushing boundaries, but this requires a more nuanced approach. Sarah blinked, clearly surprised. Are you saying we slow down? I thought you were all in on accelerating the adoption of renewable energy. I am, Musk replied. But Olivia's right in one regard. We've been so focused on the long-term vision that we've overlooked the immediate consequences of pushing too quickly. If we're not careful, we'll alienate the very people we need on our side, the working class, the companies, the governments that are hesitating. We need to find a middle ground. Sarah nodded slowly. So, what's the plan? Musk leaned forward. We need to invest in retraining programs for workers displaced by fossil fuel industries. We need to offer incentives for companies to transition to cleaner energy solutions. And we need to give governments the tools to implement these changes without causing chaos. This is going to take cooperation, not just technology. Sarah thought for a moment. It'll be a harder sell, but it might just work. You can't expect the entire world to change overnight. Exactly, Musk said. This revolution isn't about me. It's about everyone working together for a common goal. And I think I've been too focused on my way, when the truth is, there are many ways to get there. As Musk began working on a more balanced approach, he found his team more aligned than ever. The new direction wasn't about slowing down, it was about adjusting the speed of the transition to make it more palatable for the world. More importantly, it meant that Musk could bring people like Olivia on board, people with the experience and connections to push this movement forward. And while Musk was still fighting the big battle, against oil companies, governments, and skeptical media, the cracks in the opposition's armor were widening. Olivia wasn't the only one who was starting to see the value of Musk's vision. The world's political leaders, though hesitant, were beginning to realize that Musk wasn't just an idealist. He was a pragmatist who understood the stakes and was ready to make the hard decisions. The tides were shifting, and Musk felt a renewed sense of determination. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like his revolution was moving in the right direction. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? As the months went by, the energy revolution that Musk had so fervently pushed for seemed to be gaining ground. With Olivia now on board as an unofficial advisor, Musk's strategies began to incorporate more practical, real-world solutions. His efforts to make the transition smoother for workers and industries relying on fossil fuels were beginning to take shape. Meanwhile, Tesla's solar power solutions and SpaceX's partnerships with international governments began to garner more serious attention. But just as Musk began to think he might be turning the tide, new, unexpected challenge emerged from within, one that threatened to derail everything he had worked for. It started with a leak. Tesla had been making strides in their autonomous vehicle program, which was a key part of Musk's broader vision of a fully integrated renewable energy and transportation ecosystem. The idea was simple: combine electric vehicles, EVs, with sustainable energy sources, such as solar charging stations, to create a seamless and eco-friendly transportation network. Musk's ambition was clear, and Tesla was ahead of the competition. But someone within Tesla's engineering department had other ideas. A confidential document detailing the company's internal plans for an AI-driven transportation system had been leaked online. This wasn't just any leak, it was highly specific, containing details about Tesla's autonomous vehicle technology, as well as some of the more controversial plans Musk had been debating internally, plans to push Tesla vehicles into global markets faster than initially planned, and even details about testing in countries with less regulatory oversight. The leak was immediately picked up by the media, and the reaction was swift and furious. Critics quickly zeroed in on one particular detail: the potential use of Tesla vehicles in markets where safety regulations were lax. The public perception was that Musk and his company were prioritizing speed and profits over safety and ethics. The damage was immediate. Musk, typically able to handle such criticism with poise, found himself blindsided. The leak had revealed more than just the technical details, it exposed a vulnerability in Tesla's culture, a crack that Musk hadn't anticipated. There were people within his company who, for reasons unknown, seemed to be undermining the very vision they were working towards. In the wake of the leak, Musk called an emergency meeting at Tesla's headquarters in Palo Alto. The atmosphere was charged with tension. The usual camaraderie between the engineers, designers, and executives was replaced by a hushed, uneasy silence. Musk entered the room, his usually confident demeanor replaced with a subtle, hard edge. "Who did this?" Musk's voice was quiet but stern. His gaze swept across the room. "Who leaked that information?" No one answered immediately. The silence stretched, suffocating, until Sarah spoke up. "We don't know yet, Elon. But the documents are genuine. They came from within." "Inside?" Musk asked, his voice lowering. His heart raced as the implications set in. "This isn't a public relations disaster, this is sabotage. Someone inside Tesla is actively working against us." Musk's words hung in the air. Sarah looked at him, concern etched across her face. "We'll find out who did it. It's just going to take time. But this leak, it's going to hurt us. The media is already spinning it in every direction." "Not just the media," Musk replied, his jaw clenched. "The regulators are going to get involved. If this blows up, it could bring down the entire autonomous vehicle program." He exhaled sharply. "This is more than just a mistake. Whoever did this has put all our work at risk. It's a betrayal." The next few days were a blur of frantic meetings, damage control, and intense scrutiny. Musk, ever the optimist, tried to hold his ground in the face of public backlash, but the truth was harder to ignore. The leak had raised serious questions about the ethics of Tesla's approach to autonomous vehicles and the company's commitment to safety standards. The leak wasn't just about a single document, it was about the very essence of what Musk had been building: trust. The foundation of any successful company is built on trust, and now that foundation was cracked. But the real challenge lay in the fact that the leak seemed to come from someone within his inner circle. That meant there was someone who knew too much, someone who had the inside track on the most confidential aspects of Tesla's development. Musk couldn't shake the feeling that this was no accident, it was a deliberate act of sabotage. As the investigation into the leak progressed, the team discovered something unsettling. The leak had originated from an engineer who had recently left Tesla. His name was Thomas Graham, a senior engineer in the AI division who had been working on the autonomous driving algorithms. The company had parted ways with him amicably, at least that's what they thought. But it appeared that he had been disillusioned with the direction Musk was taking Tesla. His concerns about the company's push for rapid deployment of AI technology seemed to have driven him to take drastic action. Musk felt a pang of regret. He had known Graham well, had even considered him one of the bright minds of the team. To learn that he had turned against Tesla was a blow that Musk hadn't seen coming. Musk convened a private meeting with Sarah and the top executives to discuss the next steps. "This isn't just about the leak," he said, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. "It's about someone who has decided that the speed at which we're progressing is too much for them. They think we're putting profits ahead of safety. And maybe they're right." Sarah shook her head. "Elon, you can't blame yourself for this. You've always pushed for innovation. And you're right, safety is important. But if we slow down too much, we risk losing the momentum we've worked so hard to build." "I know," Musk said, pacing the room. "But we have to address the concerns. If people think we're rushing into this, we'll lose trust. And without trust, we have nothing." "Then we need to be transparent," Sarah suggested. "Make a public statement about the steps we're taking to ensure safety. Address the regulatory issues head-on. If we don't act quickly, this could spiral." Musk nodded. "You're right. We'll fix this. I won't let this sabotage everything we've worked for. But this has made one thing clear: we need to be even more careful moving forward." Later that week, Musk made a public statement. He addressed the media directly, acknowledging the leak, the concerns about Tesla's rapid deployment of autonomous vehicles, and the company's commitment to safety. He promised to be more transparent with the public and to work more closely with regulators to ensure that Tesla's technology was both safe and ethical. It was a risky move. A leader admitting to internal issues was rarely seen as a sign of strength. But Musk knew it was the only way forward. He had to regain the trust of the public and his employees. The damage had been done, but the leak had also provided Musk with a hard-earned lesson: not everyone who worked with you would share your vision. Trust was fragile, and betrayal could come from the most unexpected sources. As Musk sat in his office that evening, staring at the view of the Silicon Valley skyline, he couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. The world had always been filled with obstacles and opposition, but now, it seemed, the enemy had crept in from within. This was a new kind of fight, a fight to protect not just his vision but the integrity of the company he had built. And Musk knew one thing for certain: if he was going to keep moving forward, he'd have to fight harder than ever before. The leak had done more than just cast doubt on Tesla's future, it had opened up a Pandora's box that Musk was desperately trying to close. As the days wore on, the fallout from the leak continued to ripple across the tech world. Every headline seemed to offer a new challenge, a new threat to his mission. The media swarmed around Tesla, painting it as an overambitious company recklessly charging forward without consideration for the consequences. But Musk knew this wasn't the full picture. The leak wasn't just about a difference of opinion, it was something more sinister. There was a deliberate campaign behind it, one that went deeper than a single disgruntled engineer. Musk's mind raced. Who would benefit from tarnishing Tesla's reputation? The answer seemed obvious: rivals. Oil companies, automakers, anyone threatened by the rise of electric vehicles, but who was working behind the scenes to escalate this attack? Musk's investigation into the leak began to uncover something far more unsettling than he had anticipated. It wasn't just Thomas Graham's personal discontent that led to the leak, it seemed that he had been manipulated. A trail of financial transactions, encrypted emails, and shady contacts revealed that Graham had been in contact with someone who had access to resources far beyond a lone engineer's capabilities. Musk's stomach tightened as he dug deeper. The person behind the curtain was someone he had not considered, a former ally, now an enemy: Nathan Bennett, a former Tesla executive who had been let go 2 years earlier after a series of strategic disagreements over the direction of the company. Bennett had been the head of Tesla's autonomous vehicle division, but his departure had been messy. Musk had trusted him, once. They had spent countless hours brainstorming about the future of AI in transportation. But when it became clear that Bennett was pushing for a more conservative, slower approach to developing autonomous technology, Musk had made the difficult decision to part ways with him. The rift had been acrimonious, but it was the nature of business. Musk moved forward, but Bennett was left in the shadows, bitter and resentful. Now, it seemed that Bennett was playing a much larger game. Musk called a meeting with his closest confidants, including Sarah and the head of security, Jonathan Chase. This isn't just about the leak. This is a full-blown attack, Musk said, leaning over the conference table. His usually composed demeanor was starting to crack under the weight of the pressure. We've been played. Bennett is behind this. Sarah's eyes widened. Bennett? You think he's orchestrating this? I don't just think it, I know it, Musk replied. He's been stirring up trouble for months now. He's been trying to sabotage Tesla from the inside. And now, it seems like he's found a way to exploit someone vulnerable, someone who was disgruntled enough to leak confidential information. Jonathan, the head of security, interjected, we need to move fast. If Bennett's involved, he's probably planning something bigger. We'll need to track down every lead, every contact he's made. Musk nodded. I want to know exactly what Bennett has been doing. Who he's been talking to. And if there's any way we can get ahead of this before he escalates. The next few days were a blur of backdoor dealings and covert investigations. Jonathan's security team worked around the clock, tracing Bennett's steps and uncovering a disturbing network of individuals, high-level executives in competing automakers, venture capitalists with vested interests in fossil fuels, and even shady lobbyists who had long opposed the green energy movement. It was clear that Bennett had been working with some very powerful players, all united by one common goal, to stop Tesla from dominating the future of transportation. Musk's team began to connect the dots between Bennett's actions and several other incidents that had plagued Tesla in the past months. Unexplained product malfunctions, critical reviews that seemed to come from nowhere, and a sudden increase in opposition from politicians who had previously supported his work. It was all part of a coordinated effort to undermine Tesla and its mission. Bennett's not just a disgruntled former employee, Sarah said, after reviewing the evidence. He's a pawn in something much bigger. He's being used. Musk leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of the situation. He had fought countless battles, against competitors, regulators, and even his own investors, but this felt different. This wasn't just about protecting Tesla. This was a war on the future itself. And it wasn't just being fought with technology, it was being fought with manipulation, lies, and deception. Musk was no stranger to adversity, but the complexity of this new battle left him feeling unsettled. He had always prided himself on his ability to think several steps ahead, but now, it seemed that his enemies were playing a game he hadn't anticipated. For a brief moment, he considered the possibility that they might be too far behind the curve. The threats against his company were mounting, and the stakes were higher than ever. But just as quickly, that thought was dismissed. He would not let them win. Not this time. Not after everything Tesla had already achieved. Jonathan, I want every one of Bennett's associates put under surveillance, Musk said, breaking the silence in the room. We need to make sure he doesn't have any more tricks up his sleeve. And we need to start counteracting this misinformation campaign immediately. No more playing defense. It's time to take control of the narrative. Jonathan nodded. We'll start immediately, Elon. But we also need to be careful. The more we push back, the more we risk drawing attention to ourselves. If we expose too much too soon, we could make things worse. I'm aware, Musk replied. But we can't just sit back and wait for this to escalate. If Bennett's involved, this is going to get much worse before it gets better. We need to act fast and hit them where it hurts. As the days turned into weeks, Musk's team worked tirelessly, uncovering more about Bennett's plot. They discovered that Bennett had been using his contacts to plant false information about Tesla's autonomous technology, allegations of safety risks, unverified reports of crashes involving Tesla vehicles, and fabricated stories about the company's financial instability. It was a sophisticated operation, one that had been carefully designed to erode public trust and cast doubt on Tesla's ability to deliver on its promises. In a desperate move, Musk decided to take matters into his own hands. He reached out directly to Olivia Hayward, now one of the few trusted allies he had in the energy sector, to help him confront the narrative head-on. "Olivia," Musk said when they finally connected, "I need your help. Bennett is trying to destroy everything we've worked for, and it's not just Tesla he's targeting. It's the entire renewable energy movement. If we don't fight back now, we'll lose everything." "I'll do whatever I can," Olivia replied, her voice steady. "But we have to be smart about this. Bennett's been working with some pretty powerful people. This won't be easy." "I know," Musk said, "but we have no choice. The longer we wait, the more damage they'll do." With Olivia's help, Musk and his team began crafting a comprehensive counteroffensive, one that would expose Bennett and his collaborators for what they truly were. It was time to turn the tables on those who had been trying to pull the strings from behind the scenes. In the coming weeks, Musk would find himself on a new battlefield, a battlefield not of technology or innovation, but of reputation and influence. This was no longer just about creating the future. It was about surviving the war that had been waged against it. The weeks following the discovery of Bennett's involvement in the sabotage campaign were grueling. Musk knew that the stakes had been raised in ways he hadn't anticipated. His company, his vision, and everything Tesla had worked for were now under threat, not just from external rivals but from a carefully orchestrated internal attack. Musk had no illusions about how far Bennett and his backers were willing to go to undermine him. With Olivia's expertise and his internal team's support, Musk devised a strategy to regain control of the narrative. This was more than just damage control, it was a full-fledged counterattack. But first, they needed to address the problem head-on, beginning with an all-out PR blitz that would expose Bennett's true motives and rally the public behind Tesla's mission. The first part of the plan was a live-streamed public appearance by Musk himself. It wasn't going to be just another investor call or corporate statement, it was going to be personal. Musk had always prided himself on being an unconventional leader, one who spoke directly to the people. Now, more than ever, he needed to connect with them on a deeper level. The media was already gearing up for Musk's upcoming announcement. The press had been following the drama surrounding Tesla with bated breath. It was a story of a rising tech giant suddenly beset by sabotage, a fight against a growing shadow that seemed intent on tearing down everything Musk had built. Musk knew the power of personal storytelling. He had done it before, drawing people into his narrative of perseverance and vision. But this time, the story was different. He was no longer just telling people about his dreams, he was telling them how far people were willing to go to stop him from realizing those dreams. This was about fighting for the future itself. As the day of the broadcast approached, the pressure mounted. Musk, usually unflappable, couldn't shake the nagging thought that there was still so much more at play beneath the surface. Bennett's network was extensive. The leaked information had triggered a chain of events, and every day brought new challenges, some expected, some entirely new. On the morning of the broadcast, Musk stood before a crowd of cameras, the bright studio lights casting harsh shadows across his face. He wasn't dressed in his usual casual attire, there was no Tesla t-shirt or SpaceX jacket today. Instead, he wore a dark suit, symbolizing the seriousness of the moment. The audience was quiet as Musk walked up to the stage, his eyes scanning the room. He cleared his throat before speaking, addressing the global audience. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Elon Musk, and I have something important to share with you today," he began. For the past several months, Tesla has been under attack. Not by competition, but by something much darker. We've faced leaks, misinformation, and smear campaigns designed to discredit not just our work but our very mission. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle in. This isn't just about business. It's about a fight for the future. A future where we no longer depend on fossil fuels. A future where technology doesn't just advance us, but saves the planet. A murmur ran through the crowd. Musk knew this wasn't going to be easy, but he was resolute. This moment wasn't just about clearing his name, it was about shifting the conversation, forcing the world to see the bigger picture. There's a name you may have heard recently, Nathan Bennett. Bennett was once part of Tesla. He helped lead our autonomous vehicle division. But when he disagreed with the pace of our progress, he chose a different path. Instead of continuing to work for a better future, Bennett chose to sabotage that future. And now, he's working with powerful forces to undermine everything Tesla stands for. He's using his connections to spread lies, distort facts, and create chaos. The room went still. Musk could feel the collective breath of the audience as they absorbed the severity of his words. But here's the truth, Musk continued, his voice firm. Tesla will not be distracted. We will not be derailed by these petty attacks. We will keep pushing for what's right. We will continue to innovate, to push the boundaries of what's possible, and to change the world for the better. The broadcast was a resounding success. Musk's honesty, his clear and direct message, and his passionate defense of Tesla resonated with viewers across the globe. Social media was flooded with hashtags like #TeslaStrong and #WeAreTesla, as supporters rallied behind him. The media, once ready to condemn him, began to reconsider. Musk had done what no one expected, he had turned the narrative around, taking control of the conversation. But despite the success of the broadcast, Musk knew this battle wasn't over. Exposing Bennett and his network was only one part of the strategy. The next phase was more complicated, taking legal action. In the days that followed, Musk and his legal team filed a series of lawsuits against Nathan Bennett and several others implicated in the conspiracy. The charges were serious: corporate espionage, conspiracy, and defamation, to name a few. Musk wasn't just looking for a settlement, he wanted to make an example of Bennett. He wanted to send a clear message to anyone else who might think of undermining Tesla: there would be consequences. But the legal battle wasn't going to be easy. Bennett's network of supporters was extensive, and the legal team he had assembled was formidable. Musk had dealt with lawsuits before, but this was different. This was a high-stakes, high-profile case that would drag on for months, if not years. The courtroom would become the next battleground in Musk's war for Tesla's survival. Meanwhile, inside Tesla, the atmosphere was one of quiet determination. The employees, many of whom had been rattled by the leak and subsequent attack on the company, began to rally around Musk. They were more than just workers, they were believers in the vision of a sustainable future. Musk's speech had reignited that belief, reminding them why they had joined Tesla in the first place. Sarah, ever loyal, met with Musk after the broadcast. "You did it," she said, a rare smile breaking through her usually composed expression. That was exactly what Tesla needed. Musk nodded, though his mind was already turning toward the next step. "We've won the battle for public opinion. But Bennett's not going to stop. We need to prepare for whatever he's planning next. He won't back down easily." "And neither will we," Sarah replied firmly. "We'll be ready." Over the following weeks, Musk's legal team began uncovering more details about Bennett's financial backing and his connections. They discovered that Bennett had not only been working with automakers and oil companies, but had also reached out to several high-profile investors who were invested in competing technologies. These investors had funded smear campaigns against Tesla, undermining the company's work on autonomous vehicles, solar power, and space exploration. Musk was more determined than ever. He knew the fight would be long, and the road ahead would be filled with obstacles, but he was ready for it. Tesla had survived countless challenges before, and it would survive this one too. He wasn't just fighting for his company, he was fighting for the future of the planet, for the future of humanity. And no one, not Bennett, not the oil industry, and not any of the vested interests trying to stop him, was going to take that future away. The legal storm that followed Elon Musk's bold public counterattack began to take shape quickly. His announcement had stirred the media and rallied Tesla's supporters, but now it was time to back up his words with actions. Musk knew that to fully expose the extent of Nathan Bennett's treachery, he would need more than just public opinion, he needed solid legal ground to stand on. Musk's legal team, led by one of the top litigation firms in the country, worked day and night to gather evidence, review contracts, and prepare for a courtroom showdown. They were up against formidable adversaries. Bennett's team was well-funded, well-connected, and just as determined to take Tesla down. But Musk was resolute. This was no longer just a fight for the company, this was a fight for everything Tesla had built, everything he believed in. As preparations for the lawsuit ramped up, Musk spent more time behind closed doors, less visible in the public eye. He held long strategy meetings with his legal team, constantly pushing them to find new angles, new weaknesses in Bennett's defense. The case was complicated, with numerous legal hurdles. Bennett's network of collaborators had gone to great lengths to cover their tracks, ensuring that they wouldn't be caught so easily. But Musk had a secret weapon, his ability to think outside the box. As he reviewed legal documents late into the night, an idea began to form in his mind. Bennett had been using other tech companies to fund his smear campaign against Tesla, but Musk wondered, were those companies also vulnerable to investigation? Was there any way to connect their financial interests back to Bennett? Have we looked into the investors backing Bennett's operations? Musk asked during one of the strategy sessions. Who exactly is funding his legal defense and his media blitz? Sarah, who had been diligently working alongside the legal team, nodded. We're digging into that now. We have a few leads, but we haven't gotten anything concrete yet. These people are masters at covering their tracks. Musk leaned forward, his mind working at full speed. We need to find the money trail. If we can tie the funds back to other companies, preferably ones we're already competing with, then we'll have them in a corner. I want names. I want dates. Every transaction. And I want it all cross-referenced with their public statements. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You want to go after their investors too? Musk smiled faintly. Yes, but not just their investors. I want to hit them where it hurts. If these companies are in bed with Bennett, then we need to expose them for the hypocrites they are. They can't pretend to be against the green energy revolution while secretly funding campaigns to stop it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The Tesla legal team, supported by a growing number of private investigators, dug deep into the financial records of Bennett's collaborators. Slowly, they began to piece together a shocking pattern of transactions linking some of the most prominent fossil fuel companies, traditional automakers, and even certain venture capitalists who had long-standing ties to the tech industry. It became clear that Bennett wasn't just working with automakers or oil executives, he had significant backing from influential investors who stood to lose billions if Tesla succeeded in disrupting the traditional automotive and energy industries. Musk's suspicions were confirmed. This wasn't just a personal vendetta. This was corporate warfare, on a scale Musk hadn't imagined. As the legal investigation unfolded, the tension surrounding Tesla continued to build. The public was still behind Musk, but there were whispers of doubt starting to circulate. Were these allegations against Bennett truly the whole story? Or was Musk merely playing the victim card to cover up his own missteps? The media, once sympathetic, began to question whether Tesla's self-proclaimed status as the beacon of innovation had come with unintended consequences. Some critics wondered whether Tesla's drive to dominate had led to reckless decisions that had now triggered this full-scale war. To Musk, these criticisms were nothing more than distractions. He knew that the true battle was being fought in the courtroom, where the truth would eventually surface. He spent hours preparing for the case, carefully reviewing evidence and anticipating the arguments of his adversaries. Each piece of information, each revelation, brought him closer to the final goal, exposing Bennett and his corporate allies for what they were, nothing more than pawns in a larger game to protect the old ways of doing business. In the midst of the legal drama, Musk took an unexpected step. He reached out to Olivia Hayward, the energy sector ally who had been instrumental in helping Tesla during the earlier stages of the crisis. Musk knew that having someone with Olivia's reputation and influence in the energy industry could give Tesla a crucial edge in this fight. "Olivia, I need your help," Musk said when they finally spoke on the phone. "We've uncovered more than we thought. Bennett's operation goes deeper than we imagined. He's not just acting on his own. He's being funded by some of the biggest players in the energy and automotive sectors. We need to expose this." "I've been following the news, Elon," Olivia replied, her voice steady. "This is worse than I thought. We're talking about some of the biggest names in the industry. You're not just fighting Bennett, you're fighting an entire system. What do you need from me?" Musk was direct. "I need your connections. I need to expose these people for what they're doing. We've got the financial evidence, but I need the public and regulatory pressure to make it stick. We need to shine a light on the people behind Bennett, the ones who are using him as a puppet." Olivia's silence stretched for a moment before she spoke again. "I'll make some calls. But we need to be careful. If we go after the wrong people too aggressively, they'll retaliate. This isn't just about Tesla anymore, it's about the whole future of the energy industry." Musk felt a surge of gratitude. "I know. But we don't have a choice. This is the fight of our lives." Over the coming weeks, Olivia worked behind the scenes to rally support from key figures in the renewable energy sector. Using her extensive network, she began pushing for a coalition of industry leaders to stand with Tesla in its battle against the fossil fuel-backed sabotage campaign. Public statements were made. Petitions were signed. And soon, Musk found himself at the center of a growing movement, one that was about far more than just electric cars. This wasn't just about protecting Tesla anymore. This was about changing the game entirely, about proving that the future of energy didn't belong to the old guard but to the innovators who dared to break from the past. Musk knew that the battle was far from over, but now, he had an army of supporters on his side. The tide was turning. The legal battle had only just begun, but Elon Musk could already feel the storm intensifying. The lawsuit against Nathan Bennett and the corporate backers who had supported him was a delicate chess match, with each side calculating their next moves carefully. Musk had known that this would be a long, grueling fight, but as the weeks passed, the stakes seemed to rise higher with each passing day. Musk sat in his office at Tesla headquarters, staring at the stack of legal documents in front of him. The case was growing increasingly complex. His legal team had identified several new players in Bennett's operation, corporate heads, venture capitalists, and even a few politicians with ties to the fossil fuel industry. The discovery of these players only deepened Musk's resolve. This wasn't just a corporate squabble anymore, it was a fight for the future, for a new energy economy, and for the survival of everything Tesla stood for. Olivia Hayward had proven to be a valuable ally. She had successfully helped Musk navigate the murky waters of the renewable energy sector, using her extensive network to put pressure on some of the biggest names in the industry. Together, they began organizing a campaign to expose Bennett's financial backers, drawing attention to the hypocritical practices of those who claimed to support clean energy while secretly fueling the attacks on Tesla. But despite the progress, there was no denying that the war Musk was fighting was escalating. Every day, new challenges emerged. The press had begun to pick up on the legal proceedings, with some outlets framing the case as an epic battle between the future of clean energy and the entrenched power of the old guard. As the case unfolded, the media's attention turned into a double-edged sword. While public sentiment was largely on Tesla's side, the relentless scrutiny from journalists and pundits was only adding more pressure to Musk. One morning, as Musk prepared for another series of meetings and legal briefings, a new development surfaced. His legal team had uncovered something big, something they hadn't anticipated. One of Bennett's allies, a high-ranking executive from an energy conglomerate, had attempted to bribe a key witness in the case. The revelation hit Musk like a ton of bricks. The legal system was meant to be a place where the truth came to light, but now it seemed that Bennett and his supporters were willing to go to any lengths to win. The executive in question had used intermediaries to make the offer, attempting to get the witness to recant their testimony in exchange for a significant financial payout. Musk was seething. The corruption was more widespread than he had ever imagined, and now he had a clear window into the underhanded tactics Bennett's team was willing to use. This wasn't just about destroying Tesla, it was about silencing anyone who stood in their way. What are we going to do about this? Musk asked Sarah, his chief legal strategist, when she brought him the news. He could feel his pulse quicken, his hands tightening around the edge of the table. This isn't just a legal battle anymore. This is war. Sarah met his gaze, her face serious. We need to expose this. If we go public with the bribery attempt, it'll shift the public perception entirely. The narrative changes. The stakes are higher than ever, but it could be the turning point we need. Musk thought for a moment, his mind working furiously. The idea of going public with such a sensitive piece of information was risky, there was no telling how Bennett's team might retaliate. But the thought of his witness being intimidated, of the truth being silenced, pushed Musk into action. Let's do it, Musk said, determination in his voice. But we need to be smart about it. We release it at the right moment, with undeniable proof. It has to be a bombshell. That afternoon, Musk and his team worked with their media contacts to prepare the story. They crafted a statement outlining the bribery attempt, carefully building their case with hard evidence, recordings, emails, and text messages that linked the executive to the illegal offer. The plan was to release the information to the public in a way that would expose the corruption at the heart of Bennett's operation, while also ensuring that the press wouldn't be able to dismiss it as a smear campaign. When the story finally broke, the media reacted with shock. Headlines blared, Tesla uncovers bribery plot against key witness in sabotage case. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The public, already sympathetic to Musk and Tesla's cause, rallied behind the company even more fiercely. Social media was flooded with support, and Tesla's stock saw an unexpected surge as investors began to see Musk as the underdog in a David versus Goliath battle. But while the public was energized, the legal implications were even more significant. The bribery attempt wasn't just a breach of ethical conduct, it was a criminal act. Bennett's team was now on the defensive, and the tables had turned. Musk knew that the fight was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, he felt a renewed sense of optimism. Despite the victory in the media, there was a growing sense of unease within Tesla's ranks. The internal sabotage campaign had taken its toll. Employees were nervous, worried that the battle was distracting them from their mission to push forward with Tesla's groundbreaking work on electric vehicles, renewable energy, and space exploration. Musk had to reassure them, reminding them of the bigger picture. He called an all-hands meeting in the Tesla cafeteria, a rare move that spoke to the gravity of the situation. When the employees gathered, Musk stood at the front, looking out at the sea of faces. His team had fought tirelessly through the months of turmoil, and now, more than ever, they needed to understand that Tesla's future was still bright. I know things have been tough, Musk began, his voice steady. I know that the press, the lawsuits, and the attacks have been overwhelming. But we're not here just to make cars. We're here to change the world. And that's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take everything we've got, all of us working together. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. But I want you to know that this fight, the one we're facing right now, isn't just for Tesla. It's for every person on this planet who believes in the future of clean energy. It's for every child who deserves a healthier, sustainable world. And it's for every one of us who knows that we're on the right side of history. The room went silent, but Musk could feel the energy shift. The employees, once uncertain and worried, began to rally around him again. They weren't just workers anymore, they were part of something much bigger. Back in the courtroom, the legal battle continued to intensify. Bennett's team, rattled by the public exposure of their bribery attempt, pushed back with all their might. They filed counterclaims, accusing Musk and Tesla of defamation and attempting to sabotage their business. It was clear that they would stop at nothing to protect their interests. But Musk wasn't backing down. With Olivia's continued support and a growing coalition of renewable energy advocates behind him, he was more determined than ever to see this through to the end. The stakes had never been higher, and the battle was far from over. But now, Musk knew that the tide was turning in his favor. Tesla's future, and the future of sustainable energy, rested in his hands. Elon Musk sat alone in his office late one evening, staring out over the Tesla factory floor. The sounds of machinery and activity outside were a constant reminder of the revolution he was trying to lead. The weight of the legal battle with Nathan Bennett, coupled with the attacks from his corporate adversaries, had taken its toll. It seemed like every day brought new challenges, each more difficult than the last. Yet, Musk had never been one to back down from a challenge. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, in the form of an old acquaintance, James Sinclair, a Silicon Valley tech mogul with a reputation for cutting through red tape and standing up to corporate giants. Sinclair had made his fortune in artificial intelligence and renewable energy, and while his companies had always operated in the shadows of the industry, he had never shied away from controversy. Musk had crossed paths with him on a few occasions, but they had never been close, until now. Sinclair's company, Green Tech Innovations, had recently released a new form of energy storage technology that was far superior to anything Tesla had on the market. In the past, Musk might have viewed Sinclair as competition, but in light of the ongoing legal battle with Bennett and the increasing threat to Tesla, Sinclair's expertise might be just what they needed. Musk had heard rumors that Sinclair had been privately critical of Bennett and his allies, and that piqued his interest. If anyone had the resources to help expose the true scope of the conspiracy, it was Sinclair. The phone rang, snapping Musk out of his thoughts. It was Olivia Hayward. "Hey, Elon, I've got news," Olivia said, her voice full of excitement. "I've been talking to James Sinclair. He's on board." Musk leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you mean, he's on board? On board for what?" Olivia paused, then responded with a hint of amusement. "He wants to help. He's offering you access to his tech and research, and he's willing to throw his full support behind your legal efforts. He's got an army of experts, a network of investors, and a deep well of resources that could tip the scales in your favor. He's also been tracking Bennett's movements for years. He knows what you're up against." Musk raised an eyebrow. "I never thought I'd see the day when James Sinclair would offer to help me. He's always been more of a lone wolf." "Times change, Elon," Olivia said. "And Sinclair is seeing the same thing you are. This isn't just about Tesla anymore, it's about the future of energy. Sinclair understands that better than most. He's also got some skeletons in his closet that he might be willing to share if it means taking down Bennett." Musk smiled. "Well, it looks like we're going to need all the help we can get. Let's meet him." The next day, Musk and Olivia flew to the Green Tech headquarters in Silicon Valley. The building was sleek and modern, filled with cutting-edge technology and a palpable sense of ambition. Sinclair greeted them personally in the lobby, his sharp eyes and casual demeanor immediately putting Musk at ease. "Elon," Sinclair said, extending his hand with a grin. "I wasn't sure if you'd ever take me up on my offer, but I'm glad you did. We've got a lot to discuss." Musk shook his hand, sizing up Sinclair. He could tell that the man was sharp, his reputation for getting things done quickly wasn't just talk. "I'm glad you're willing to help," Musk said. "We've been making some headway, but Bennett's network is vast, and we're only scratching the surface." Sinclair nodded. "I know exactly what you're up against. Bennett's a dangerous player. But I've been tracking him for years. His methods, his funding sources, his network, it's all connected. And it's not just the energy sector that he's trying to control. He's playing a much bigger game. I've got the tech and the expertise to help you expose him. Together, we can finish this. Olivia, who had been silently observing the conversation, chimed in. And we've already started digging into Bennett's backers. We need more muscle, someone who can help us understand the corporate landscape and get the truth into the public eye. Sinclair smiled. That's where I come in. I've got the tools and the connections to not only dig deeper but to make sure that when we expose Bennett, it'll stick. We can take down the network of corruption he's built. Musk felt a surge of optimism. It was clear that Sinclair wasn't just offering a superficial alliance, he was all in. But Musk also knew that bringing Sinclair into the fold would come with its own set of challenges. Sinclair was known for playing by his own rules. Musk had to ensure that their goals were aligned, that Sinclair's ambitions wouldn't overshadow the mission. James, I appreciate your offer, Musk said, looking directly at Sinclair. But I need to make one thing clear, this isn't just about exposing Bennett. This is about the future of Tesla, the future of sustainable energy, and the future of humanity. If we're going to work together, that needs to be the priority. Sinclair didn't hesitate. Understood. The future of energy is what's at stake here. Bennett is part of the old system, a system that's corrupt and destructive. But I believe we can change that, and I'm willing to use everything at my disposal to make it happen. With Sinclair's involvement, Musk felt as if they had gained a critical new ally. The combination of Tesla's cutting-edge technology and green tech's breakthroughs in energy storage could provide a much-needed edge in the battle against Bennett. More importantly, Sinclair's knowledge of the corporate landscape could give them the leverage they needed to expose Bennett's backers and bring the full weight of public opinion to bear on the case. The days that followed were a blur of strategy sessions, meetings with legal experts, and late nights spent poring over data. Sinclair brought his team of engineers, analysts, and financial experts into the fold, working hand in hand with Tesla's top brass to refine their legal strategy and gather more evidence against Bennett. By the end of the week, they had uncovered more crucial information, ties between Bennett and a number of key figures in the fossil fuel industry. But there was one critical piece of the puzzle that remained elusive, the connection between Bennett's network and certain government officials who had been quietly blocking Tesla's efforts to secure permits and funding for some of its more ambitious projects. Musk knew that exposing this link could be the game changer they needed. If they could show that Bennett was using his influence to manipulate the political landscape, they would have the leverage to force real change. But it was a dangerous game to play. Politicians had power, real power, and Musk knew that crossing them could lead to consequences far beyond the courtroom. As Musk sat in the Tesla boardroom, surrounded by his most trusted advisors and Sinclair's team, he felt the weight of the moment. They had reached a crossroads. They had everything they needed to win the legal battle, more than enough to expose Bennett and his network. But it was clear that winning the case was only the first step. The real fight would be in reshaping the future, in shifting the balance of power from the old energy giants to the innovators who were working to create a cleaner, brighter world. Are we ready for this? Musk asked the room, his voice steady but filled with determination. We're not just taking down Bennett. We're tearing down a system that's been in place for decades. This is bigger than Tesla, bigger than all of us. It's about changing the course of history. Olivia spoke first, her voice resolute. We're ready. You've got an army behind you, Elon. And now, with Sinclair's help, we have the power to expose everything. Sinclair leaned forward, his eyes sharp. The old guard is about to realize that they can't stop progress. We've got this. Musk nodded. For the first time in a long while, he felt confident that they were on the brink of something monumental. This wasn't just about winning a legal battle, it was about forging a new path forward, one where clean energy and innovation triumphed over corruption and greed. The partnership with James Sinclair was already proving to be invaluable. Within days of their agreement, the green tech team had uncovered key data points that shed new light on Nathan Bennett's extensive network. It became apparent that Bennett wasn't just a businessman trying to make a profit, he was the linchpin of a much larger operation, with his influence reaching deep into the energy sector, the political landscape, and even global trade. Elon Musk knew that this was just the beginning. The evidence they were gathering had the potential to bring down the entire system of power that had been in place for decades. But the challenge was overwhelming, and the more they uncovered, the more dangerous the situation became. Back at Tesla's headquarters in Palo Alto, Musk was reviewing the new data with Olivia and Sinclair in the strategy room. The walls were lined with maps, charts, and images connecting various pieces of the puzzle, corporate entities, financial backers, political donors, all tied to Bennett in one way or another. Musk rubbed his eyes, his mind racing. Every new piece of information felt like another weight added to his already heavy shoulders. "This is worse than I thought," Musk muttered, his fingers moving across the touchscreen displaying the maps of Bennett's financial empire. "These people aren't just manipulating the market, they're pulling strings at the highest levels of government. We've got senators, governors, even members of international organizations involved." Olivia nodded, her brow furrowed. "And it's not just about energy. Bennett's team has been orchestrating an entire agenda. They've been working to control entire industries, transportation, healthcare, food production, anything that can generate massive profit while keeping the world dependent on outdated systems. They've positioned themselves as the gatekeepers of the global economy." Musk leaned back in his chair, staring at the data. "We're not just up against a company anymore. This is a full-scale network of corruption, manipulation, and exploitation. It's all connected." Sinclair, who had been quietly observing the conversation, spoke up. "Exactly. And we've only scratched the surface. We have the power to expose this, but we need to be smart about it. One wrong move, and we could have the entire system working against us. We can't afford to be reckless." Musk was silent for a moment, then he looked up at Sinclair. "You're right. But we can't let this go on any longer. If we keep going at this pace, we'll lose momentum, and they'll find a way to discredit us. We need to go public with what we have, but in a way that's undeniable." Olivia jumped in. "We've got the media's attention now, but we need a blockbuster revelation, something that can't be ignored. We need to tie Bennett directly to the top political figures, the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes. If we can make those connections public, it will change everything." Musk's eyes sparkled with determination. "That's the key. We need to show the world that Bennett isn't just trying to bring down Tesla, he's trying to hijack the future of the entire planet. He's using his influence to manipulate the world economy, to maintain the status quo." The team went to work quickly. Over the next few days, they drafted a comprehensive dossier outlining the extent of Bennett's reach. They compiled evidence showing how Bennett's companies had used shell corporations and offshore accounts to funnel money into political campaigns, bribe foreign leaders, and suppress opposition to his business practices. It was a web of deceit so complex that it would take years to fully untangle. But they didn't have that long. They needed to act fast. They knew the best way to strike was to hit Bennett where it would hurt the most, his ties to powerful political figures. With Sinclair's help, they had tracked financial transactions that linked Bennett to several high-profile politicians, including senators who had been lobbying for tax breaks for fossil fuel companies and governors who had been suppressing renewable energy projects. Musk had always known that the political system was deeply flawed, but seeing the scope of the corruption firsthand made him sick to his stomach. He realized that this battle wasn't just about saving Tesla or protecting clean energy. It was about tearing down a system that had been rigged against progress for decades. The fight had just become personal. Olivia was the one to suggest the next bold move. "We released the dossier, but we also need to schedule a live-streamed event. We need to get in front of the public, show them who Bennett really is, and give them the facts in real time. We can't just rely on reporters. We need to own this narrative." Musk looked at her, impressed. Live streamed? You're right. That will get eyes on us. But we have to be careful. We need to make sure the facts are airtight and that we're not leaving ourselves open to attack. Sinclair added, I'll take care of the tech side. We'll make sure everything is secure. We'll stream it through multiple channels to ensure maximum exposure. No one can ignore this. The night before the live-streamed event, Musk found himself alone in his office once again, staring out over the factory floor. The weight of everything he had learned in the past few weeks was overwhelming, and the pressure was starting to build. He couldn't help but wonder how far Bennett and his allies would go to protect their empire. But in that moment, he also felt something else, a sense of purpose. He knew that this wasn't just about winning a lawsuit or protecting Tesla. It was about changing the future. If they succeeded in exposing Bennett and his network, they could spark a revolution, a shift in the way the world viewed energy, politics, and the economy. The world was watching. The next morning, Tesla's social media accounts were flooded with teasers for the upcoming live-stream event. Rumors had already begun circulating that Musk was about to release something big, and the media had caught wind of it. By midday, the anticipation had reached a fever pitch. At 3 p.m., Musk, Olivia, and Sinclair sat in front of a camera in Tesla's headquarters, ready to make history. Musk's face was calm, but his mind was racing. This was it. The moment when everything would change. Olivia gave him a nod, signaling that they were ready. Musk took a deep breath, then addressed the camera directly. Good afternoon, he began, his voice steady but filled with determination. Today, we are here to expose a network of corruption and corporate manipulation that has been controlling the future of energy for far too long. For years, Nathan Bennett and his allies have been using their power to suppress progress, to block the development of clean energy, and to maintain a system that benefits only the few, while the rest of the world suffers. We've been fighting against them for months, and today, we will show you the truth. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The live stream had already attracted millions of viewers, and the media was watching closely. This was the moment where they would either succeed or fail. Olivia stepped forward, holding up a series of documents. What you're about to see is a detailed dossier of Bennett's financial dealings, his ties to politicians, and his attempts to suppress competition. We have uncovered evidence that links Bennett to powerful figures in both the political and business worlds, people who have been working behind the scenes to keep the status quo intact. Sinclair's voice came through next, explaining the technical aspects of the evidence. We've verified every document, every transaction, and every connection. What you're about to see is irrefutable proof of Bennett's corruption. The screen behind them lit up with charts, financial transactions, and photos of politicians shaking hands with Bennett. As the information unfolded, the viewers were stunned. They could see, in real time, how Bennett had been manipulating the system for his own gain. It was the kind of expose that could change everything. When the live stream ended, the silence was deafening. The world had just witnessed the scale of Bennett's operations, and the reaction was immediate. News outlets scrambled to cover the story, social media exploded with hashtags calling for accountability, and the public was in an uproar. The system that Bennett had spent years building was now exposed for all to see. Musk knew that this was only the beginning. The battle had just entered its final phase. But for the first time in months, he allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. The aftermath of the live-streamed expose was nothing short of explosive. The media frenzy surrounding the release of the dossier had reached unprecedented levels. Headlines screamed of corruption, conspiracy, and corporate greed. Nathan Bennett's empire was shaken to its core. But Musk knew better than to celebrate just yet. The war was far from over, and this was only the beginning of their battle. Within hours of the stream ending, Bennett's legal team went into overdrive. They filed lawsuits, issued public denials, and launched a coordinated campaign to discredit Musk, Tesla, and anyone associated with them. Bennett himself made a rare public appearance, sitting down with a well-known anchor to deliver his response. I've spent my entire career building companies that change the world. Tesla's founder, Elon Musk, has a habit of using deception to manipulate the public. He is the one who's trying to control the future, not me, Bennett said, his calm demeanor barely hiding the rage underneath. This is just another one of Musk's desperate attempts to distract from his failing companies. Bennett's attack was calculated, and his words were carefully chosen. By painting Musk as a failure, he aimed to undermine the credibility of everything Tesla represented. His legal team went on the offensive, calling the information released by Musk fabricated and part of a smear campaign. Despite the onslaught, Musk stayed composed. His resolve had hardened over the years, and he knew this would be no different than any other fight he'd encountered. This wasn't just about him or Tesla, it was about exposing the rot at the heart of an entire system. I expected this, Musk said quietly as he watched Bennett's interview on a live feed. He's not going to go down quietly. Olivia, who had been watching the broadcast alongside Musk, nodded. He'll try to turn the public's opinion against us. He has a powerful media network. But we can't let him control the narrative. Sinclair, who had been working tirelessly in the background to ensure the security of the evidence, spoke up. We've anticipated this. Our next move has to be decisive. We need to strengthen the public's trust in what we released. People need to see the full picture, Bennett's game of manipulation, how deeply he's embedded himself in the political system, and the lengths he's gone to suppress new technology. Musk's eyes gleamed with a cold determination. I agree. But we also need to go on the offensive. If we let Bennett control the narrative for too long, he'll regain the upper hand. It's time for us to hit him where it hurts. Elon Musk had always been a man of action. While Bennett's team flooded the media with counter-narratives, Musk and his allies were quietly working on their next strategic move. The legal battle would take time, but they couldn't afford to wait for the courts to make their decisions. They needed to act fast, to keep the pressure on Bennett and maintain public momentum. A meeting was called with Tesla's top executives and Sinclair's team, focusing on one thing: how to use the media to their advantage. Olivia had already begun rallying journalists and influencers sympathetic to their cause, but they needed something more powerful, something Bennett couldn't counter. It was then that Sinclair made a suggestion that caught everyone's attention. We've been holding back one critical piece of information, Sinclair said, his voice low and deliberate. A smoking gun, if you will. The final piece of Bennett's operations, a secret alliance he's had with a shadowy group of international investors who control major energy sectors globally. These investors have helped him buy politicians, manipulate markets, and ensure that clean energy innovations are suppressed. Musk raised an eyebrow. You have evidence of this? Sinclair nodded. Yes, but it's more than just financial records. We've intercepted communications, we have video footage of meetings, and we have eyewitness testimonies from insiders who worked with Bennett. The scale of this operation is beyond anything we've previously revealed. Olivia's eyes widened. If we release this, it'll be the nail in the coffin for Bennett. Musk leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. This was the kind of game changer they needed. But he also knew that releasing this information would bring even more heat onto them. Bennett wouldn't take it lying down. We do this carefully, Musk said. If we push too hard, we risk making ourselves targets. We need to release this information in stages, let the public digest it. We also need to prepare for the fallout. Sinclair smiled, his confidence unwavering. I've already taken the necessary precautions. We have secure channels for this. The world will know the truth, but they'll never be able to silence it. As planned, the team began releasing the new information piece by piece. The first leak was a bombshell, a video showing Bennett in a private meeting with high-profile investors, all of whom had links to notorious political figures. In the video, Bennett spoke openly about his plans to manipulate markets, block clean energy initiatives, and secure government contracts using his financial influence. The world was stunned. News outlets picked up the story within minutes. The video went viral, with social media users sharing it at an unprecedented rate. For the first time, the public could see the true scale of Bennett's operation, and the outrage was palpable. "I can't believe this is happening," one Twitter user commented. "I always knew something was off about Bennett, but this? It's like something out of a spy movie." But Bennett's team wasn't going to go down without a fight. Almost immediately, they issued a counter-argument, claiming the video was doctored. They accused Musk and Sinclair of using deceptive tactics to further their agenda. Bennett himself made another public statement, denouncing the video as another desperate ploy by Elon Musk to distract the public from his own business failures. But this time, the public wasn't buying it. In the days that followed, Tesla's stock surged as people rallied behind Musk's message of transparency and reform. Meanwhile, Bennett's reputation continued to crumble under the weight of the evidence. The more Musk and Sinclair released, the more Bennett's empire began to fracture. The once unshakable tycoon was now on the defensive. But even as the walls began to close in, Musk knew that Bennett wasn't finished yet. He would fight tooth and nail to keep his empire intact. It was only a matter of time before the next round of attacks came, and Musk needed to be prepared. His legal team worked around the clock, gathering further evidence and ensuring that their case was airtight. At the same time, Musk took to social media, directly addressing the public and keeping them informed. Late one evening, as Musk sat in his office, reviewing the latest news reports, he received a message from Olivia. It was a simple text: "The storm is coming." Musk set his phone down and sighed. He knew exactly what she meant. Bennett had one last trick up his sleeve, and it would come soon. But this time, Musk was ready. The public was with him now, and they weren't going to let Bennett get away with it. The final confrontation was drawing near. The storm was indeed coming. After weeks of relentless media coverage and public outcry, Bennett's empire was crumbling. The once invincible tycoon now faced mounting legal challenges, public protests, and an increasingly hostile media. Musk could feel the momentum shifting in their favor. Every day brought fresh revelations about Bennett's corrupt dealings, and the public was demanding accountability. But even with his empire on the verge of collapse, Bennett was far from finished. Inside the sleek, glass-walled conference room of Tesla's headquarters, Musk, Olivia, and Sinclair sat together, strategizing their next move. They had already released bombshell after bombshell, each piece of evidence further dismantling Bennett's carefully constructed empire. Yet, Musk knew Bennett would fight to the bitter end. "I can feel it," Musk said, leaning back in his chair, his eyes locked on the holographic display in front of him. "He's going to make one final move. We need to be ready." Sinclair, who had been combing through financial data for the past few days, nodded in agreement. "Bennett's legal team is already working on a massive counteroffensive. I've also heard whispers that he's trying to rally other corporate giants to his cause. He's not going down without a fight." Olivia, who had been organizing the media campaign, added, "We need to stay one step ahead of him. If we release any more information, we need to ensure it's timed perfectly. If we expose him too soon, we risk letting him get the upper hand with a counterattack." Musk's eyes narrowed as he stared at the screen in front of him. "We've got him on the ropes, but we can't be complacent. He's going to try to discredit us, he's going to play the victim. The next step is critical. We need to force his hand." The team's discussion was interrupted by the ringing of Musk's phone. It was a call from their legal team, and the tension in the room immediately escalated. Musk answered quickly, his voice calm but sharp. "Musk here." "Mr. Musk, we've got news," came the voice on the other end. "Bennett's lawyers just filed a motion to dismiss the case. They're claiming we've fabricated evidence and that the public release of the data violated several legal statutes." Musk exhaled slowly, absorbing the news. "Of course they did. Are the documents secure? Do we have everything we need to push back?" "We're ready," the lawyer replied. We've got more than enough evidence to not only keep this case going, but to hit Bennett with even more serious charges. We can't back down now. Musk looked up at Olivia and Sinclair, his expression intense. We move forward. Full speed ahead. The next few days were a blur of legal battles, media appearances, and last-minute preparations. Bennett's legal team tried to delay the proceedings, throwing out baseless accusations, but Musk's team was prepared for every tactic they threw at them. The evidence was airtight, and it was only a matter of time before the courts would have to make a decision. Then, late one evening, Musk received an encrypted message from an anonymous source. The subject line simply read, "Bennett's final move." The message contained a detailed account of a secret meeting between Bennett and several influential political figures. In the meeting, Bennett had allegedly discussed using his influence to sabotage the legal proceedings against him, leveraging his connections to manipulate the outcome of the trial. Musk stared at the message, his pulse quickening. This was it. This was the final piece of the puzzle that would expose Bennett for good. We've got him, Musk muttered under his breath. He immediately called Olivia and Sinclair into his office. As they gathered around, he showed them the encrypted message and the damning evidence. The political figures Bennett had been conspiring with were names Musk had already heard of, but now they had proof that would obliterate Bennett's defense. We release this now, Musk said decisively. This is the moment. If we get this out there, Bennett won't be able to deny it. The public will see exactly what he's been doing. Olivia hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I agree. It's time to end this. But we need to be careful. This is the kind of information that could trigger a massive backlash. If Bennett has the power to influence the courts, he might try to turn this against us. Musk turned to Sinclair. Get the message out. Secure channels. Full blast. Sinclair didn't hesitate. Understood. I'll have it ready within the hour. The world had never seen anything like it. Within hours of the leak, the story had taken over every news outlet. The footage of Bennett's secret meeting with high-profile political figures was damning, and the revelations sent shockwaves through the political establishment. The scale of Bennett's influence, his manipulation of the legal system, his attempts to subvert the judicial process, was laid bare for the world to see. The public response was immediate. Protesters took to the streets, demanding justice for the victims of Bennett's empire. Social media exploded with hashtags calling for accountability, while activists and environmentalists rallied behind Musk's message of reform. Musk's legal team immediately filed motions to bring new charges against Bennett, including bribery, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to manipulate the courts. The evidence was overwhelming, and it was now impossible for anyone to deny the scale of Bennett's corruption. But Bennett wasn't going to let this go quietly. As the public outrage grew, he made one final attempt to salvage his empire. A private meeting was arranged with the highest levels of government. He had one last gambit, a deal with the political elite to protect his interests at all costs. The day of the final court hearing arrived. Musk stood in the courtroom, surrounded by his legal team, with Bennett's representatives on the other side. The tension in the room was palpable. This was the moment that would determine the fate of their entire battle. The fate of Tesla, of the future of clean energy, and of the corrupt system that Bennett had spent years building. As the judge entered the room, all eyes turned toward the bench. The gavel came down, and the proceedings began. Bennett's lawyers argued fiercely, attempting to discredit every piece of evidence Musk's team presented. But the tide had already turned. The political connections Bennett had once relied upon were now liabilities. The public outcry had forced even the most powerful figures to distance themselves from him. The walls were closing in. And then, the moment arrived. The judge, having reviewed all the evidence, rendered a verdict. Nathan Bennett, the judge began, your actions have been egregious, and your attempts to manipulate both the market and the legal system have been laid bare for the world to see. You will face the full consequences of your actions. The court finds in favor of Tesla, and we will begin proceedings for both criminal charges and the dissolution of your companies." The room fell into stunned silence. Musk stood, his face stoic but his heart pounding. This was the victory he had fought for, the one that had seemed so far out of reach just months ago. Tesla had won, but more importantly, the world had won. As Musk walked out of the courtroom, Olivia by his side, the weight of the moment hit him. The battle had been long and grueling, but the tide had finally turned. Bennett was finished. His empire was destroyed. And the future of clean energy, of progress, was now within reach. Musk turned to Olivia, a rare smile crossing his face. "We did it." Olivia smiled back, her eyes filled with pride. "We did. But the real work starts now." Musk nodded. "The real work starts now." The courtroom buzzed with chatter, but to Elon Musk, it felt as though the world had gone silent. Bennett's empire had crumbled, and now, as the final gavel echoed through the courtroom, Musk stood on the precipice of something far greater than even his wildest dreams. The world was changing, and he had been at the center of it all. Walking down the courthouse steps, he was met with a wave of journalists, cameras flashing, and microphones thrust in his direction. For the first time in months, the air felt electric, not with the tension of a battle yet to be won, but with the optimism of a fight that had just been won. Musk's face remained calm, though the excitement was palpable in his chest. This was the moment he had worked so hard for. "Mr. Musk. How does it feel to have taken down one of the most powerful men in the business world?" one reporter shouted, a hint of admiration in their voice. Musk turned to face the crowd, his expression thoughtful but resolute. "It feels good, but this fight was never about me. It was about the future. The future of clean energy, of innovation, of breaking the old systems that have kept progress locked away for too long. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning." As he spoke, the crowd fell silent, hanging on his every word. Bennett was just one example of the old guard, of those who would do anything to hold on to power. But we've shown that truth, transparency, and perseverance can bring even the most powerful down. And now, we move forward. We continue the work. We continue to push for the kind of world we deserve. The reporters were silent for a beat before the questions began to come fast and furious. "What's next for Tesla? What are your plans now?" Musk's eyes sparkled. "Now we focus on building the future. We focus on the advancements that Bennett tried to suppress. Clean energy, sustainable technologies, transportation that doesn't pollute our planet. We're already planning the next phase. The work is far from over." Olivia, standing beside him, gave a subtle smile. She had witnessed the transformation of this fight, how a single battle had shifted the course of their mission. They were no longer just fighting to keep Tesla afloat, now they were fighting for a world that would benefit from their innovations. The reporters didn't stop, but Musk knew this moment was fleeting. The real work, as he had told Olivia earlier, was just beginning. The victory over Bennett had been monumental, but it was only a piece of the larger puzzle. The work to break the chains of corporate monopolies, to protect the environment, to innovate sustainably, this was the mission that would define his legacy. As the media frenzy began to die down, Musk found himself reflecting on the road that had led him here. The personal sacrifices, the betrayals, the endless hours of planning, the stress, the sleepless nights. It had all come to this point, victory. But more than that, it had come to a realization, this victory wasn't just his. It belonged to the world, to everyone who believed in the power of innovation, in the promise of clean energy, and in the need to break free from the forces that had long held back progress. He and his team gathered for a final debrief in Tesla's headquarters. The energy was electric. They had done the impossible, and now it was time to look to the future. "We've got the momentum," Sinclair said, his voice filled with optimism. "Now we push forward. Tesla has proven that the future can be bright and sustainable. We've already begun laying the groundwork for the next phase. The world is ready. Musk leaned forward, the weight of responsibility settling over him. It's not just about Tesla anymore, he said. It's about the larger movement. We need to bring others along with us. We need to change the way people think about energy, about innovation, about what's possible. If we do this right, we can redefine the future. Olivia, who had been quiet for a moment, spoke up. This is bigger than us now. This is about the world, how we can create something better, something that doesn't rely on greed and manipulation, but on collaboration and progress. Musk nodded. Exactly. The battle against Bennett may have been won, but there are many more to come. We need to build alliances, engage with communities, and keep pushing the boundaries. We're not just changing the energy sector. We're changing the world. Months passed, and the momentum Musk had hoped for began to manifest in real, tangible ways. Tesla's stock continued to rise, but more importantly, the ripple effect from their victory against Bennett was felt across the business world. Other companies began to look at Tesla not as a competitor, but as a trailblazer in a new, sustainable future. Governments, once hesitant to engage, now saw the opportunity to work with Musk and his team on projects that would pave the way for a cleaner, more equitable world. The renewable energy sector experienced an influx of investment. Tesla's autonomous vehicles made waves as the industry began to pivot toward fully electric transportation. The world was changing, and Musk was at the forefront, leading the charge. Yet even with all the victories and advancements, Musk knew this was just the beginning. The world was filled with challenges, and there were still battles to fight. But now, the fight wasn't against a corrupt billionaire like Nathan Bennett. It was against a system that had, for too long, rewarded greed and exploitation. The victory against Bennett had proven something critical: progress wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. Musk spent more time in the labs, working closely with engineers, brainstorming new ideas, and making sure that Tesla was not just a leader in the electric car industry but in all things sustainable. Every day was a new challenge, a new opportunity to push the boundaries of what technology could do for the world. As Musk sat on the balcony of his home, looking out over the sprawling city, he allowed himself a rare moment of quiet. The weight of everything he had done, and everything still to be done, hung in the air. He had never been one to rest on his laurels. He never intended to. But for a brief moment, he allowed himself to enjoy the victory. This was a victory not just for him, not just for Tesla, but for the future. The future of clean energy. The future of innovation. The future of humanity itself. And as the sun set over the horizon, Musk knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?